Welcome everybody to the Norton Planning Board's meeting Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Again, this is a hybrid public meeting, so members of the public and board members are welcome to participate in person or remotely. In person, we are here in the Norton Public Library. There is also a Zoom link available in the meeting agenda. And if you wish to join online via the Zoom app directly, the meeting ID is 638-929-1060. There's also a phone number available to dial in directly. The meeting will also be available on Norton Cable Access and available on the Norton Media Center's YouTube channel should you wish to watch a replay at a later date. As this is a hybrid meeting, I will just go over some general virtual attendee rules of the road, so to speak. I would ask that everybody who's joining the meeting remotely, please mute your line if you are not prepared to speak at this moment, as that will help ensure that we do not have feedback from various microphones or people talking in the background or kids running in asking for help. If you would like to speak, I've generally found that it is simplest if you can try to use the reactions function within the Zoom meeting itself. There's an icon there that allows you to raise a virtual hand. When you do that, it will pop to the front of the Zoom attendees panel, so we will know that you are waiting to speak. If we have a topic of discussion where people would like to speak both in person and remotely, I will do my best to go back and forth and get everybody a chance to speak as simply as possible. So with that out of the way, I'll call the meeting to order and dive into our business of the day. We have a lot of things on our agenda this evening, so I'm going to try and move things along here. In terms of planning board business and policies, I'm going to take that at the end of the meeting, as we have 3 different public hearings on the agenda. We don't have any bills or warrants to approve yet at this time, or minutes to approve. So we will dive right into the meat of our agenda. The first 2 things we have are review of findings and conditions and execution of decision for 2 different recent projects that we have voted on. First of which is 237 East Main Street. This was an application to construct a warehouse space, and we made a decision in our December 19th meeting. That decision was a denial. So I just want to restate, we don't need to address specific conditions for this project as it was a denial, and there are no conditions associated with the denial. But in terms of reasoning behind the denial, I know we had 6 members present and 4 members voted in favor and 2 voted against the project. Laura, I'm not sure, I know not to put you on the spot, but I know you were one of the members who did not vote to approve the project. As we delineate some of the findings of the decision in terms of what went into the denial, is there anything that you'd like to suggest from your perspective in terms of a reasoning behind that decision?
Sure. Very simple, using 10.10. I felt the project was not socially desirable, and the applicant did not demonstrate a existing need.
Okay.
Project would not satisfy an existing need.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. And we can finalize the wording of this in kind of administratively. Are there any other aspects of the project? And I'll open this up to other board members. Wayne, you had also voted against this project as well. If there's anything else that you'd like to add, or if you feel that
No,
Steve, sorry, wrong person, I apologize. Felt that we should include a specific finding relating to our denial of the project, as it did not reach a supermajority.
I agree exactly. It's not desirable where it's positioned. It doesn't fill an existing need. Right next to it is a lot more warehouses of a lot larger size. So I don't think it meets the criteria. In industrial zone allows for 10,000 square feet by right. Everything beyond that is up to us to decide whether that's right for the area. So I think the ratio is off of how many small warehouses we have compared to the large ones.
Okay. Is there anything else that we'd like to add to this decision at this time? Okay. Any other comments related to this decision? Otherwise, I'll work with Brian to finalize wording, and then we'll get it to Laura for signature. Okay. So, one down. The next item on our agenda is again a review of findings and conditions and execution decision. This is SP 482 remand, 21 Fairley Lane and 210 Bay Road. This is also known as the Next Sun Solar Energy Project. And again, I've gone over this at a few of our recent meetings, but we are only considering conditions 16, 19, 49, and 56 under the conditions of the decision. I had sent around some draft wording to the board as a conversation starter. So in terms of the specific conditions, I'll take them one at a time here. So condition 16 related to the surety and the method of the vehicle of the surety. So I had suggested adding the surety can provide to the town the cash, bond, or other instrument as determined by the town treasurer. Does anybody have any suggestions, alterations, etc. on that one? Okay.
I did have a question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Is it condition number 57,
Does that relate to the surety being renewed every 5 years?
the decommissioning costs being done every 5 years?
Which would tie to the surety related to the decommissioning, yes.
That was my question, is if in 5 years they come back and it's now $1.5 million, the bond is then increased to that amount automatically, or?
There would need to be a review process.
Okay.
I believe that condition also specifies that that reevaluation needs to be reviewed or peer reviewed.
Yep. I just wanted to, I couldn't imagine it was there unless it was related to
Yes.
16, so, okay,
Yes.
thank you, that's all.
No, that does tie back to, I think, some of the questions about procedure here, and I see Amy Questle, Town Council, has joined the meeting and has her virtual hand raised, so Amy, I'll ask if there was a comment that you wanted to make related to this, or if you wanted me to dive into things more.
No, I did have a comment on condition 16, which is, it's my recollection that the town treasurer requested the cash bond, which is what the court rejected.
I believe the treasurer has changed since then.
Okay, great.
So that's
Just
what
wanted to
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's my understanding, is that the treasurer at the time had one way of doing
Yes.
things, and that is no longer necessarily the case, so,
Okay, then that's fine.
yeah. As it relates to the other condition that Laura mentioned, it specifies that that the decommissioning amount would be reviewed every 5 years. It does not state whether that would be 5 years from the date at which the decision was originally issued, or whether that would be 5 years from when it went into effect, or anything of that nature. As this,
In my opinion, it would be from when the decision is final, so that would be when all appeals are resolved.
so that would be when all repeals are resolved, okay.
Yes.
Is that something where we can take a position in an alternate stance?
Not during this remand. This remand, the court was clear with this remand that we're only discussing the 4 conditions.
Right,
So 16, 19, 49, and 56.
right. but,
And the rest of them were affirmed by the land court. All the other conditions were affirmed.
what I'm envisioning, and this may be, in this scenario, is that, let's assume that in a fantasy world, the decision is finalized tomorrow, which is not not feasible in any way, shape, or form. I think in theory, 5-year point from when the decision was first issued would be coming up later this year. So, depending on how we interpreted that original 5-year period, the town in later this year could go to Nexon and say, your 5-year period is up, we're looking to review the amount for your decommissioning plan. But
So
if
the
you don't feel
problem that
that's
we have
appropriate
there-
or possible, then that's a different conversation to have with the town manager.
Yeah, no, so the problem that we have there is that, that condition with regard to the 5 years, has never been in effect because of all of the appeals.
Okay. Understood. So in that case, I will be speaking to the town manager about ways to potentially bridge that gap till the next 5-year period from a risk or a liability standpoint.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So, looking at the other conditions, we have 19, 49, and 56. Both 19 and 56 relate to water. So, I think we can take both of those together. I had originally stated when I passed around the draft that I thought condition 19 could stay roughly as is, and all of the details would be in 56. But I'm not sure if other people feel the same way, or if people feel there's other things that we need to address in 19.
I hacked it up.
Please. I am by no means the end word on any of this. What is the best way that you would like to share your thoughts?
I can show you a clean version, I can show you a red line version. Is there a preference?
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't get to the window, give me 1 second.
No worries. Zoom is always frustrating when we need it to actually do the things that we want it to do.
Yeah, I can't get it to pop open. Come on. There we go, sorry,
Okay.
apologies. Alright, this is red line.
Okay. That's not too bad.
Eh. The teal is stuff
Okay.
that I've added.
Okay.
So, Tim's was proposed as my edit the applicant's original suggested wording from the memo.
Okay.
I felt we should expand it beyond groundwater, and it should do baseline testing of both the surface and groundwater, not just serving the property, but surrounding the property. And this is all up for discussion, but this was my thought. Baseline testing of the surface water should include, at a minimum, Fuller Hammond Reservoir in Easton, north of the existing bogs, which is to establish the baseline quality of the water above both the bogs and Fairlane Lane solar facility before it flows into the property. We also do not have to worry about getting permission because the applicant owns that parcel.
Okay.
Should include Winnicott Pond, all agricultural reservoirs on the property, and no fewer than 4 or whatever number we determine equidistant locations along Mulberry Meadow Brook within the borders of the town of Norton. baseline testing, and then it goes on to groundwater. Baseline testing of groundwater should include at a minimum private wells within 500 feet, but I wasn't sure if we should expand that based upon your suggested comments within condition 56.
Okay.
Of the project's energy system, provided the applicants have provided their agreement to such testing. And then the report must provide a finding that the proposed construction of the system just goes on, and then just a
Okay.
couple of edits.
The 500 feet radius from the energy storage system was what the applicant had proposed in their
Correct.
suggestion.
Yes.
And I believe within that radius, there was potentially only one private well within that radius.
Okay.
I
I
had
could not find-
suggested it expanding it.
Okay.
That is a point that is open for discussion and debate among the board. Obviously, anything that we do, we need to have evidence and reasoning behind it. I know, are you intending the Mulberry Meadow Brook note to imply downstream of the facility?
I want it above, mid, and down. I want multiple locations,
Okay.
and that's why I had equidistant locations within, and maybe I was not clear with that comment that we should.
I'm not clear immediately reading it where those locations should be.
Okay, starting with the northern border and ending with the southern border, I can clarify.
Okay. So you're suggesting, let's see. Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna adjust that then, okay. Any other members have comments based on, the suggestions, or the dual suggestions for condition, this is number 19.
I'm on board with 1,000 feet radius. Agreed.
Okay,
Same.
okay. Is there a different, radius related to the ESS that anybody would like to address? Or anything related to the, baseline testing locations that Laura has proposed?
I didn't know whether 4 was sufficient.
So all of those are, we are a collective board, so it's our collective opinions to go into here. And again, this is water only as it relates to a potential release from the energy storage system, is the directive by the court, so. Okay. Why don't we move on to 56, and we can see if there's any interrelated points that we want to tie together. Laura, do you have those in the same document?
I do.
Perfect. Okay. So you basically spelled out that it would be governed under 310.
Yes, I
the license
started with that.
control. That's fine.
Yep. And then instead of after, I used upon.
Okay.
Any fire, the applicant must immediately begin monitoring for surrounding, again, same surface and groundwater quality impacts as follows.
Can I just pause you for 1 second?
Sure?
Just a note to people in the Zoom meeting related to this item. The public hearing on this item is closed, so we are not accepting further comments. For future topics on our agenda, comments within the Zoom chat will not be read into the record. We would need you to raise your hand and voice your comments directly. So, sorry, Laura.
No, that's fine. Okay, so applicant will be required to test one, all surrounding surface and groundwater, including private wells, providing consent has been provided. I had within 500 feet, but I did not know whether the board had a viewpoint that that initial testing should be narrower in scope. That's within 500 feet of the energy storage system. And 2, in the event contaminants traced to the project are detected at any sites within that original 500 feet, testing shall immediately commence within an additional radius, such distance to be established and reevaluated by the licensed site professional.
Okay.
Further, all surface and groundwater, including private wells within the radius determined by the licensed site professional, should be tested at least once a year and at other such times as they determine and is dictated under that law.
Okay.
You wanna stop there and then,
Okay, so the 500 feet we've discussed, and it seemed to be that there was agreement for 1,000. I think those should match.
okay? Well, think of this as something has happened. Do we wanna bring that in narrower?
Right, we should make it smaller, right?
I was thinking smaller, not larger,
To try to get it tested faster, right?
yeah.
I mean, okay, so we have baseline testing for 1,000, but the initial start is 500, or if the licensed site professional says something otherwise, their decision overrules anything we have anyway.
Exactly.
It almost seems moot, because that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
Whatever they wanna do, they're gonna do. They take
Which
contr- they
is
take
their
control,
job,
correct,
yes.
they take control as soon as something happens.
Yeah. Okay,
So whether we say 1,000, 500, it
And whatever
almost seems like a
number,
moot
yeah,
point.
whatever number it is, if there's a contaminant found, it immediately expands to whatever the professional says.
I viewed this from my perspective as a minimum that we establish regardless of what the licensed site professional says. So if he says we only test within 50 feet, for whatever reason, maybe we're still establishing a minimum in the event of a release,
Okay?
over and above what they are suggesting, what the licensed site professional says. So the licensed site professional says you only need to worry about this,
You wanna.
our minimum is different.
Okay.
Whether they overlap is, if he says the same thing, if he says more than we said, it doesn't matter. If he says less than we said, then this is the minimum. That's how I view whatever we're saying here.
So what do we feel is the minimum?
You keep it as 1,000. Yeah.
We all in agreement?
Does anybody have any additional thoughts? I'm hearing no dissent. That seems like we're agreed on 1,000 within this point. And again, this is from the energy storage system, it's not from the project itself, because we're only allowed to consider a release from the ESS.
Okay to edit?
Yep, I think so. Okay. And then get the follow-up there. And at least once a year, such time until can you just go back, scroll down to the bottom of that?
Yep.
So we tested, the page break, of course. Test at least once per year and at any such time determined by the LSP until such time as dictated under that.
Yes.
So, again, we're saying that the LSP's guidance is the law here. If they say no additional testing is needed, that's,
I kind of viewed it as the state takes over and they have the authority. But I don't know whether we have the ability, do we have the ability to override them with our condition?
I mean, what we would be putting here would be additional testing over and above whatever the state is requiring. That's kind of how I'm viewing both sections of that.
Okay.
If we feel that shall be tested at least once per year, and, so at least once
Yeah,
on an annual basis, and then if it needs to happen after that, the LSP's guidance goes.
okay,
So that's, there's an event, the LSP has evaluated the event, they've done everything they need to, and then there's one annual test, and then anything else is continued. That would be the effect of what you have here.
yes,
Okay.
but I'm open to. I'm taking my brand ownership, I'm open to suggestions.
Yes. Amy?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I read that a little bit different. I read it because it says shall be tested at least once a year and at such other time as determined by the LSP. I see it as it's just a never-ending annual test. So I think it should be shall be tested at least once and at any other such time as the LSP determines.
Okay.
Once a year makes it sound like it's annual, ongoing, forever.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we tested at least once.
Kind of thought it was an ongoing annual thing.
It wouldn't be what would happen in this situation is the MCP, the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which is 310 CMR 40, would automatically kick in, and they would test as long as up until they get to an ND or a non-detect number, and then they would close out the site. So by putting it the way that we're putting it doesn't mean that it will only be tested once, because under the MCP it's going to be tested, and directly after the incident, if there is an incident, then it will be tested probably more than once a year, I would say. But what we're saying is it has to be tested once, and then it has to be tested in accordance with the MCP.
Okay. So do we feel that is appropriate? Is there any adjustments that the board would like to make to that?
I'm good.
Okay. And Laura, if you scroll down, I believe there's some additional points here.
Yeah. I wanted more reporting for less. So all water quality testing reports required by this condition must be submitted to the town with a copy provided to, and we can discuss this, all abutters and abutters to abutters within whatever radius we decide of the project site, and within a 500-foot radius of the perimeter of all areas found to be contaminated as a result of the release of hazardous materials traced to the project. And I understand that literally could be the entire town, and I am fine with that.
Let's see. Okay. Okay. Is there, so I see that, is it on the applicant to provide the notification, or to provide it to the town and let the town's emergency personnel handle publication and notification?
Yeah, they should have to pay for the mailing.
Okay. So, abutters, so we're saying a copy to provide to all abutters and abutters to abutters within both a 500-foot radius of the site and a 500-foot radius of the perimeter of all areas found to be contaminated as a result of the release of materials traced to the project. Okay.
Could we simplify that and just say the copy needs to be provided to all residents?
I'm fine with that.
It's our town water, everybody's involved.
I didn't know whether we could.
I'll raise my hand.
Amy would.
I see you unmuted, so if you would like to make a comment, please do.
Thank you. So that condition could be considered onerous on the applicant, and making the, we have to remember that we're dealing with solar, and with solar under 40A section 3, paragraph 9, we are not allowed to unreasonably condition solar. So I guess my question would be, if we're only going to require testing within a certain radius, wouldn't we only be notifying the people that are within that testing radius? Because if we're notifying other residents that are not even within the testing radii, then I'm not really sure they wouldn't have any standing to do anything as a result of the testing results.
I think the expansion of the potential notification, I think, is tied because the site is connected to the aquifer, which is the water source.
But that's all covered under the MCP.
Yeah.
Perhaps, could we, I know that, in another town, we did site plan review for a power plant, and we, had them put all of their testing on their website. Perhaps we could do, we could have the notice go to or we could have the results, the water testing results, go to the town, and whatever radius you come up with, 1,000 feet from the ESS or 500 feet from the ESS, and then also have them posted on their website.
Posted on a publicly available website within a reasonable period. Not sure what that would be, because
Right.
the testing would need to be completed first before it's posted.
Right, well, it would
Yeah.
be when the water quality testing reports required by this condition must be submitted to the town with a copy provided to all. And then that would have to also have a temporal, that would also have to have a time, within 30 days of the reports coming in, I would say.
Okay.
And then,
Thank you.
once they're submitted to the town, they're a public record.
Yes. Okay.
So my thoughts on, if I could just play devil's advocate in regards to we can't apply conditions that are too onerous. This is taking into account, we have a fire and a leak event, which I'm of the opinion onerous is off the table in terms of what we need to condition, and that should not play into it whatsoever. They have contaminated our town. So, I view that as onerous. So, with that being said, I don't, also in regards to notification within the testing area, we can't set the limit of the notification because the MCP is ultimately going to decide what that radius is going to look like. So we can't set it to a certain radius because the MCP is going to make the determination as to the radius that gets tested.
Okay.
So I think you could do both, where you have 1,000-foot radius, let's say, or, the OPS, whichever is greater, right? Just be like, minimum 1,000, but if it goes past 1,000 by the expert, that's the new radius that we notify people at.
I see no reason why every resident shouldn't be notified. And again, it's only if there's a disaster. It's not something they're gonna have to do monthly or yearly. It's really at the last event.
I mean, there are requirements that the
So if
water-
that's the case, then that should be, if that's the case, that's different. Because
mean-
This says water quality, it says all water quality testing reports required by this condition. That's all of the reports, so that's every time the water is tested. If we're only talking about,
We're only allowed to talk about if there's a release from the ESS, so everything in this condition is contingent on a release from the ESS.
correct, but once there is a release and the MCP kicks in, then there are scheduled, there's quarterly, there's annually, there is testing that is required under the MCP. And so the way that I'm reading this is that every single water quality testing report has to be sent to the entire town. And I'm wondering, I'm also, as a side note, is it possible to shut the chat function off? Most of the meetings do that, because you do have comments coming in, and that we really can't. This is a closed proceeding. It is hindering this. If this appeal, if this remand decision does get appealed, we can't have comments coming in. Most meetings do shut off the chat function.
I do not believe I have the ability to do so.
Okay. Okay.
I have stated that comments in the
have.
chat
No, you have.
are
You have
not
to-
to be read into the record or
Right.
considered as part of this discussion.
Okay, there's more chats coming in.
And I would
as we're
ask that
speaking.
if anybody is doing that, they will be removed from the meeting, period. Thank you.
So I guess we where we're at now is we do need to figure out, are we only talking about the immediate testing after there is a fire? Or are we talking about every single time there is a water quality test? Or are we talking about perhaps an annual report of the water quality testing? Something like that perhaps. But if we're talking about every single time and every single time private wells and surface water points that we've already discussed in 19, if we're talking about every single time those are tested, that's far more than, one report getting sent to the entire town.
Okay. I think that makes sense from a framing the question standpoint, so thank you. From that perspective, what do we feel is the appropriate method of notification here?
So,
I don't mind the idea of requiring a public website to share all of this data. As well as copies provided to the town, which the town could share and publicize however it felt was most necessary.
we could send it out on our emergency notification, right?
Yeah. So,
Do we feel that we have do we owe more to the folks who are on a private well in terms of notification, if that is their only water source?
on a private well, we're talking, and this is again, we're talking over and above whatever is required by the LSP.
Yeah.
So we were saying, can you scroll up a little bit?
Sure.
Just to-
To which part?
So, just try and catch the page break there.
Got it.
So testing, okay. Water quality testing, so we're doing all the testing. We've touched on that. Water quality testing reports required by this condition in the event of a release, air parentheses in my head, must be submitted to the town with a copy provided to whom? So submitted to the town, while posted on a public facing website for a period of not less than 1 year. I would, and before you go too far,
Mhm.
after you must be submitted to the town, delete 2 and replace it with a comma. So submitted to the town, be posted, and then with a copy provided to whom? Directly. In addition to notification of sending it to the town and putting it, making it available.
I think the abutters who are on a private well who are affected.
Abutters to the site, are we talking about a radius from the ESS?
I would prefer it be
And
those,
how would
those
it-
private wells that fall within the contamination radius.
Yes.
And how would how would the applicant know who's on a private well?
The MCP would. Because they've tested it.
But they've only tested the radius at 1,000 feet.
Well, I'm assuming if they've gotten to 1,000 feet and they still have contamination, they're gonna go another,
Right. But the baseline testing is
Yeah.
only for 1,000 feet. So those are the only ones who are initially baseline, based on what we have already.
yeah,
So
so,
in the event of a release and
If I
the,
can
and the LSP says,
yeah, if I can
we're
scroll
done.
back up, I think
Yeah.
there's reporting requirements under 19 already. And maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so this is 19, so this is the initial findings. The findings of the report and peer review assessment must be presented and accepted by the planning board. And we can
okay,
make the initial one here, posted on that same public facing,
okay,
Page.
that's a baseline, so that doesn't,
yeah.
um,
But down here, I am viewing this as, this is the subsequent testing after an event. And those reports.
okay. So does it make sense to have those radii match?
We don't know the radii is the problem. It's
Right.
literally,
We-
and
To Eric's point, could we do copper provided to all abutters included in baseline testing, or all abutters within boundaries as determined by the LSP, whichever is greater?
okay. Say that one again. Alright, all butters included in the baseline testing and,
In baseline testing, or
is it an and or an or?
those within a boundary determined by the LSP, whichever is greater.
Okay.
So we're saying the minimum is everybody who was in that baseline testing group, and the maximum is determined by the LSP.
Did I capture that right?
Um, let's see, or those, let's say, after the or those residents,
Determined to be affected by the contamination?
yeah. Yeah, so I think Eric's suggestion there, of allowing the or statement in the LSP to set the radius is effective in that case. Are there any additional,
Yeah, just one thing with the website, we should probably be explicit as be posted, no later than 30 days, after testing, and to be up for no less than a year.
I would say testing reports should be provided within 30 days of receipt, or, I was gonna put it at the end for all,
Oh, okay,
for
sorry.
everything.
So, all reporting should be posted no later than, did we say 30 days?
Yes,
From
from testing.
testing. Okay. Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just one more, the be posted on a public facing, I was saying delete town,
Oh, I just added it.
no.
Okay.
We're submitting to the town can post it, they need to post it on a public facing website. So the
Okay.
burden is on them to
Create it.
create it and post it and host it.
Should we also create an end date for how long that reporting should be up for?
No less than 1 year.
Okay.
We might wanna add that, we wanna make sure the applicant's clear on that we say be posted by the public facing website provided by the applicant, just so we're clear that's their website, not ours.
Yeah.
Created and hosted by.
Yeah, that's fine.
That looks good, yeah.
Do we wanna say hard copy provided?
I don't know how else they would provide one, so
Email?
they wouldn't have email addresses for, to,
Okay.
to provide a notification, they would have to be working with the town, be working with mailing addresses.
Okay.
That would be my expectation. I guess that would mean that we're striking the rest of that paragraph.
Yeah.
Let's see, and if we scroll down, there was, I had one other section in there we go. That last paragraph there, if they choose to not have a battery, which all this contingent on, we can waive it.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions or objections on that?
No, I like that part. If they wanted to use a mechanical battery system, flywheel or something like that, it'd be
No chemicals, no testing.
fantastic.
Okay. So that's that one. Are there any, looking at those two together and thinking on them, are there any additional comments, additions, subtractions that the board would like to make to these?
I can scroll up if needed.
And as, Laura, as you scroll up, I'll just stay for my own edification for the board. After we complete our portion this evening, one of the things that I'm viewing as a next step from my perspective, which I'll share with the board, is a letter to the fire department speaking to, there's probably 20 conditions in the decision which tie to the fire department needs to sign off on X, Y, Z, and a whole bunch of other things. Just stating that for them, making sure that they're, even though they have access to the decision, stating that we want them to be aware, to be vocal in what they need to be prepared to deal with any event at this site. Because all of those conditions were not appealed by the applicant. So all those conditions are there. Okay.
I have 949 up if you wanna just
Yep.
work off this copy.
And the last one is noise. This is the final condition that's part of this remand. The only red lines here.
Do you wanna see
Yeah.
yours?
No, it's just scroll up, the red line's fine.
Okay.
the charge to the board by the court was to change perceptible to a standard which could be measured and attainable. I had put in 8 decibels above background levels as a quote unquote, I'm gonna say placeholder for our discussion. And Laura, that's
No, this is the applicant's,
the applicant's ad, the closest?
yes,
Okay. And if you actually, yeah, I do want you to scroll down to mine.
okay. So this is how yours read?
Yes, so I had said at any property line.
Yes.
In theory, that should cover the closest one, but I view the sound barrier equipment that has been discussed as like a baseball backstop. And I wanna make sure they're not just deflecting it somewhere else and putting the sensor where it is most advantageous. And if that's not the case, and the closest property line is the one that is gonna have the highest sound, then it's irrelevant.
I also liked the idea of, so I had originally thought, should we specify, it says closest to the equipment area, so I was initially thinking, should we specify the ESS, but when I read yours, my feeling was it's probably better to remove the establishment of potential source of noise entirely.
Yeah,
I agree.
let's make it simple.
Yep.
So if you scroll down to the,
Yeah.
So the question, the original condition that this board made in a few years back, I forget which year now, was not perceptible at the property line, which the court has said is not measurable. The applicant has stated that 8 decibels is an attainable standard, from their perspective. And again, to Amy's earlier point, there is a line which state courts have been very fuzzy about, of not overly regulating solar uses. So I know we had a debate about this when the public hearing was open. Do we feel 8 is the appropriate number? Do we feel that anything below 8, the applicant will appeal and potentially have thrown back and sent back to us with the number of 10, which is the state standard? I'm one voice. We have 7 members on the board.
They said they can't do anything under 8.
That is what they said.
So I feel like,
That is also their statement, and they're the ones trying to build the project.
right,
So,
I do feel anything under 8, if we do 6, if we do 4, I think that will be right back to us, in my opinion.
And the state will just decide it's gonna be 10.
And it'll probably be just,
that
it
is,
maybe won't even be back to us, it'll just be decided.
It's 10.
I mean, in theory, the state could feel that you told us to say perceptible. We have put in a number that we feel is measurable.
I would be more comfortable with it lower, to be honest.
I would too.
I'd be fine with saying, let's try for imperceptible. And as low as we can go.
Wait, it was imperceptible. That's what God
It
said.
was perceptible was the word used.
Well, I mean, 0 is
What they're asking
imperceptible.
for is a number.
1 is perceptible.
What they're asking for is a number.
I would be comfortable with 5.
We kind of set a standard for the next project, whatever we say here.
That is a potential precedent, but again, there are so many unique factors related to this project where it would never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Not least of which, this is proceeding under a site plan approval and not a special permit.
Right.
Meaning that if this project was proposed today, it would be coming forward under a discretionary special permit. So we would have, in theory, more freedom to set additional conditions. But yes, we've been asked to put in a number. number that we set will, whether we wanna do this as a formal vote and motion, that's one avenue we could do here. Cause I'm sure if everybody maybe has a different idea of what number they would like to see, other than 0. So, we're including 0. 0 is also a number, so. I'm gonna stop talking here, and I'm gonna let somebody else say something.
I would have liked to have seen more examples of what 10 decibels or 8 decibels and 0.
Because
what
it's
that
all
actually means.
tied to the background.
Right.
It's tough to do that, yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm of the opinion the applicant attempted a reasonable compromise in that it is not the maximum allowed by the state. It's a number they say they can work within. And it is the number that will not cause them to appeal again. And I think if they come back and appeal again, the state is going to say, we gave the planning board an opportunity, we're taking the decision away from them. The decibel level will be 10. I think if we do anything other than 8, we will wind up with 10.
That's my gut feeling, however, I don't wanna make a decision being afraid to get sued again. I
Right.
would never make that,
It's not
residents were
afraid to
more
get
comfortable.
sued again,
you
At
know.
a certain
I-
level.
I don't wanna take that into account.
but
Right,
are you gonna be comfortable with 10 when we could have had 8?
It's
8 is a
roll-
guarantee.
It's a roll of the dice.
right.
Wayne, I see you unmuted. Did you wanna add something?
One thing, agree with the 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Laura's proposed scenario is actually probably the most likely, so I would go with the 8.
Amy, I see town council, if you have thoughts that you'd like to add to this discussion.
So I would also agree with Laura, particularly because, there is no number in your zoning bylaw, as to whether it's 10 or, and there's nothing. And therefore, the default is the state. And, it won't come back to you. The court will just, I think the court will determine that they would follow 310 CMR 7, which is the noise regulations, which is 10 above background. So, and the other, issue that I just wanted to quickly bring up is that, during the trial, there was a sound study presented during the trial by Nexsun. And it was determined that 8 is an acceptable, 8 above background would be acceptable, so.
Acceptable to them, you mean?
Acceptable because, no, it was, their expert testified that 8 was acceptable because it was under 10. And because Norton does not have a noise bylaw, it doesn't have a number, different than 10, or it doesn't have any number, that it would default to the state, which would be 10, and because they can attain 8, they're within that.
Okay, thank you. So if somebody would like to make a motion to suggest 8 or any other number, I will pause here.
Motion to suggest 8 decibels above background level at the property line,
At any property line,
at any property line, yes.
Seconded.
okay? I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? And this would be a simple majority. So, not hearing any further discussion, I will go through the numbers for a vote. Jim, I'll start with you since you're right to my left.
No,
Steve,
No.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So, the board's vote is to put a number of 8 in that condition. I believe that covers all of the conditions that we have as part of this remand. Amy, in terms of formatting, is the appropriate action for us to submit a copy of the full decision with the edited conditions, or submitting these as one document with, what's the appropriate format, or do you want us to send this to you and you can dress it up?
I would like it, if you could send it to me, Mr. Chairman. I think that what I would do is, we would eventually, file with the town clerk a remanded decision highlighting only these 4. We would have all of the conditions in it, but we would highlight the remanded conditions. We would probably just name them remanded condition 19, remanded condition 49, things like that, because we want to make sure that we're clear as to, what is appealable and what's not at this point. But we would want a full decision so they could record a full decision.
Okay.
So if you have Brian send it to me, I can I'll pull it all together.
Okay.
I do need the language from tonight though.
Yes,
That was on the screen.
that is,
Yeah.
I assume that will be in Brian's inbox
Okay.
sometime in the next day or so.
Do you
Thank
want,
you.
do you want the red line, or do you want just a clean version?
Red line would be good, just so I know I'm getting it all.
You got it.
Please. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So that concludes our discussion of this agenda item. Obviously, this was a limited remand decision, and it's something that's been going back and forth with the board for several years. Is there anything else that we wanted to add to this in conclusion before we move on to the public hearing section of our agenda this evening?
Just to the public that this isn't gonna happen again.
Okay. Okay. So, moving ahead, we have 3 public hearings on our agenda this evening. This first one is SP 20475, 0 Rear Eddy Street. This is a continuation from September the 12th, October the 10th, November the 14th, and December the 19th. I know there have been a number of back and forths here. Brian, do we have, I know we have members from the applicant here. Amy, I know you were here for next time, but I think it might be helpful if you stuck around for this one just for a little bit, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Thank you. So I'll ask the applicant to just give an update of what has transpired in the past couple of months, so we can continue to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Elliot Bray. I'm an attorney in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, representing the applicant behind me. With me tonight is Margaret Bacon of Civil Site Engineering. And as you stated, over the past couple of months, there's been a series of emails that Attorney Questo, myself, and Attorney Costa had gone. Actually, Brian was the conduit, and we were working around Brian. The issue came up at the last meeting regarding the A&R plan that was endorsed by this board on June 25th, 2020. Certain questions were raised. I think, if I understood the town council's opinion, one that I share, that A&R having been approved by the town was a A&R that cannot be rescinded with a casino case. Then additionally, if I understand town council and myself, again, the frontage issue was addressed in the A&R, and that the common drive is a provision that this town has adopted and is utilized, as the town is aware, in a number of different sites. So I would like to say factually, the 6/25/20 plan had some very minor modifications in the previous 2 hearings. As a result of some discussions with my client and Margaret Bacon, we have revised the plan that was previously sent to this board. It's the exact A&R plan from June 25th, 2020, that was recorded March 10, 2021, in the Bristol County Register of Deeds and Plan Book, the correct number is, it was Plan Book 25, I believe. I'll have to look up the plan book for you. So, Margaret can go over the plan tonight. Brian has got the revised plan from your last hearing. It's the exact plan that was approved. So I think that issue hopefully is behind us.
So, yeah, and just to summarize for other members of the board, because I had gotten copied on some of those chains. The question was whether we felt, Brian, I'm sure it makes sense to share one of the plans for the project. Because of where the property site sits as it relates to Route 140 and the slope and the guardrail and things like that, there was a question of whether the site had appropriate frontage. The determination and the opinion from town council is that the availability of frontage is something that the planning board, that is under the planning board's charge for the A&R process. So when the planning board approved the A&R, as Mr. Bray mentioned, the board essentially said that this has sufficient frontage, and that's a portion of the, that's already a decided matter essentially.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does frontage guarantee vehicular access? Or just physical, like pedestrian access?
I think I can try to answer that in a roundabout way, if I may, because I think Attorney Purcell and I agree on this also. I want to be clear, an A&R is not a building permit. The applicant, as all applicants following this board, then has to go to the building inspector, who is the building commission under zoning act, and he will either issue a building permit or not issue a building permit based on some of the concerns that you would raise. If that answers your question.
Sure. Thank you.
And Amy, did you have anything additional to add
Yeah,
from your
I
perspective?
did, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, an A&R establishes a lot, and usually a planning board will have to determine that there is access to that lot. Now, there's a bit of a difference between bylaws from town to town. Some bylaws require that vehicular access be through the lot's frontage. That is not the case in Norton. And so conversely, for example, in Lakeville defines frontage as that portion of a lot which is bounded by the street line or way, sidelines, minimum building, and then it says, the frontage must be suitable for development of an access route or driveway to the building site. So in Lakeville, you have to be able to access your lot through your frontage. In Norton, you don't have to, and that opinion is bolstered by the fact that Norton allows for common driveways. Many towns do not allow for common driveways anymore, but Norton does. So you do not necessarily have to access your lot through your frontage in Norton right now.
Okay.
And if I may amplify that, this town and this board has in the past approved similar common driveways where the access was not through their respective frontages.
Okay. So I know that was one of the key issues that was raised and we discussed the last time we heard this applicant, I believe in November.
Correct.
So in terms of, the lot lines being presented are the same ones that are part of that A&R. So that is, I'm not gonna say a non-issue, but it's being addressed through the common driveway. And we're relying on the past board's determination that frontage is frontage.
But just to reiterate, and not to say there's any decision, but we are not forced into a common driveway just because they have frontage. Technically, we allow the lot with frontage and say, like, you could just use it for a farm or something like that. You don't have to put a vehicle in. Is that sort of what we're saying?
Let's see. access to the lots, to some of the lots, is dependent on the common driveway.
I think your bylaw, off my memory, I have it with me, I'm not gonna recite it, but I think it basically states something to the effect that common driveway is allowed for up to 4 residential lots. And there are certain criteria that have to be met, some of which have been met, the water, sewer, fire, et cetera, that we've addressed, and Mark is prepared to speak to later on tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I brainstorm something else real quick? The idea of that road being accepted as a town road so that there's frontage on that instead of the main road.
Entirely different kettle of fish. This is a common driveway, a private way, subject to a road trust. This will not be a public way. This will not in any way be a town street accepted by the town.
Okay.
Do you agree, Mr. Chair?
That's not being presented, that's what, not being presented, so.
Correct. That would be a subdivision that you're referring to, and this is a common driveway.
Lawyers always like, when I say I go to the 4 corners of the page. It's
That's how it's supposed to be trained.
simple, makes it much simpler. Okay.
So having said that, are there any
Yeah.
questions on that? So having said that, and again, procedurally, there were no appeals filed, so as Mr. Griffin said, that the A&R issue appears to be resolved. There are 2 requested reliefs this evening. There is, as you just mentioned, a common driveway, a special permit being requested, and there is a special permit for duplexes. To that end, if I understand the town bylaw, the first issue is, would the project be socially and economically desirable? Well, as a caveat, and I don't say this is good, bad, or indifferent, but there's an inventory shortage of quality housing. I think most people would agree to that. These are 8 units that would be of high quality, very nice properties, and there's a demand. Obviously, there's a demand because prices are going crazy in the world, because supply goes down, prices go up. So I believe that that is in fact a desirable thing that the town needs. These lots are 80,000 square feet minimum. Many of them are larger than 80,000 square feet. So it's not as if it's a highly condensed area. Would it satisfy an existing need? Again, I believe that housing is one of the biggest needs that the Northeast has in general. The advantages of the project, do they outweigh detrimental effects and such effects of the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera? During the previous hearings, we've had a lot of people speak in front of the board, and there were a lot of people that I'm sure are wonderful people, they're good people, but they were very upset about the project because it's where they fished or it's where they did recreation. I respect that, but it is private property. And the owner has a right to come before this board and, you know, absent being mean or saying something derogatory, going on private property would probably be trespassing, and we're simply here to try to, you know, invoke rights that we believe we have. To that end, as I stated earlier, my client has done significant work to date, specifically stormwater's been addressed, fire department's been addressed, water and sewer, site distance evaluation on the roadway, snow removal, construction of a guardrail for safety reasons. So we believe that any detriment that may be available or harm the area has been mitigated or eliminated. And to have 8 units on, granted, we're not using all 60 acres, but it's a 60-acre site. Granted, some of it is in the waterway, but it's a very large landlocked piece of land. There's a lot of land in the back. That land will be forever undeveloped. I think, would you agree to that?
Yes.
We'd agree to that as a condition of the special permit, that there would be a deed restriction that it would not be further developed. Goes all the way to Jackson Street? Goes all the way back to Jackson Street. That's something that we would agree to. I'm available for any questions or concerns. Margaret's available for any questions or concerns, as Sam is.
I mean, I do have some. As far as like restrictions on whether it's developed or not, conservation restriction type thing, is there any willingness to allow public access to the water? Like an easement over the area for people to use for boating or fishing, going upriver?
I do know through the Conservation Commission process, they brought up that very thing. And we did this is just a big overview of the site, and here's our two stormwater basins. And we did provide an easement here for access down to the lake. So that was one of the comments we addressed to the Conservation Commission.
Okay, but that would only be for the residents of that property, right? You
For this, well, actually for any resident on this road,
For the,
whether
yeah,
that,
only the 4 lots of the property, yes.
Are you referring to the general public?
Yes, because if, like, again, the whole pond, the river, if the town were to allow this, if the townspeople were to support this kind of project, is there something the town people get in return for it? Could that be a public access area as far as the waterways?
I'm thinking out loud. I think it would be extremely difficult to monitor and manage, to be honest with you. It's not something that I commonly see in this type of situation. Can't say I've seen it on the site.
The town's not losing anything, though.
Right, the
They
town didn't
wouldn't
have
have
it.
access to begin with because it's
Correct.
private property.
Correct, that's my point.
Well, I mean, we have developments all around town that have public easements throughout them, or recreational areas that are public access, so it's not anything unheard of at all.
Yeah, this is,
It's something that we have had in, whether it's cluster development or a subdivision, something that a developer has provided as part of the overall project.
Right.
Um,
Of course, we are to weigh
If-
whether it's socially or economically desirable, and a social aspect to it, but whether we have access to the forest or.
If the applicant says that
If it's-
it's not included as part of the code, it's not included as part of the proposal. So if we're looking at it as a balancing test, there's not a public access on whichever side of that balancing test that you would want to review. They have stated that that back portion of the lot would remain undeveloped. I'm not sure, I don't know offhand if that would, if that connects to any existing areas under the land conservation or anything like
It
that.
connects to a parcel owned by Norton, and that connects to LPS land.
Okay, so there would in theory be access through LPS to the rest of that site, which is
Yes.
in theory remaining undeveloped. So
And the
that would
river
be-
flows across Eddy Street, so I guess street side would have river access also.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so to that point, is there, I think that makes sense. I'm not sure for, you spoke to that that section of land having a deed restriction. Are you just a deed restriction or a conservation restriction, or is there a specific vehicle that you're proposing?
whatever the board deems appropriate.
Okay. I know each of those has varying levels of paperwork with the state, so.
The point is that we're making a commitment that we're not gonna further develop it.
Understood. Okay.
If I may, that very, very back of the parcel is also the very corner that they're not gonna develop is one of the last remaining hunting areas in Norton, where it's within legal range for hunting. It's far enough away from any house or road.
500 foot,
Yeah, 500 foot.
it's 500.
So that back part is also, okay.
Way beyond that, the houses.
Right. Houses in here.
Yeah. Okay. That is not something I was aware of, so thank you.
I'm making a map.
Okay.
I used to be a hunter.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm going back to notes from literally September. We did not, at that time, have a peer review of stormwater report. Do we have that yet?
yes, this was reviewed through the Conservation Commission's stormwater consultant, Patrick Brennan, and he's reviewed and approved stormwater design.
Do we have a copy of that?
I don't have a copy of that approval with me, but he did approve it.
We need a peer review of the stormwater report that was originally done. Is
If-
that complete?
Yes,
Can we get a copy of it?
yes, you can.
Great. Here's my concern about this property. It's in the Wetland Protection District. According to 5.5, number 23, it involves any elevation below 70 feet. Out of the 4 parcels, 3 of them are almost entirely below 70 feet. Only one of them, lot number 4, is above 70 feet. You are asking, and the Wetland Protection District, a permitted use, is construction of single-family homes on a frontage lot. It does not include duplexes. So, I am more in favor of you coming forth with a by right design and asking for a special permit for the common driveway only.
Okay.
You did mention that during that meeting.
I did.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a comment to that? You want to hold off on comment?
I don't have a comment to that, no.
Okay.
And we had plans from 2020 that were designed differently, that did not impinge so much on elevations below 70 feet. They were designed differently so that 2 of the lots were above 70 feet and 2 of them were below. So,
And actually, through the permitting process, that original design kind of evolved into this because the original design had the roadway going through the center of the lots. So, and then all the houses were on this side, so it was closer to the wetlands.
right,
And everything slopes down this way. So we were able to move that road 70 to 80 feet, or the common driveway, further up away from the wetlands, which is a good thing.
it is, but you've changed one issue for another.
Well, actually, elevations are going up. I'd have to take a look at that older plan. I don't know how the houses down here could be above that 70 because you're going down gradient. You know, unless they brought in a lot of fill.
That's not allowed.
No, I know, no, so that's what I'm saying, so everything's going downhill this way. And
Right.
those houses on that
But your
original plan.
lots, 3 of the 4 lots, lots 1, 2, and 3, the majority of which are below 70 feet elevation.
On this plan,
Yes.
correct,
Yes.
correct.
So we've changed
This is,
we've moved it away from the wetlands and we've impinged more on the Wetland Protection District.
depending, we don't, yeah, old plans are old plans,
Yeah,
so, but your point about being below 70 feet is noted,
yeah.
definitely. Okay. Additional comments or questions for the applicant at this time?
Maybe just something for you, Mr. Chairman, to get straight in my head. We have one special permit in front of us that's gonna encompass the common driveway, the duplexes, and the wetlands protection district?
It's my opinion,
Doesn't need a.
there are 2 separate special permits before the board. A special permit for common drive and a special permit for duplexes.
That's what I'm
As
saying.
they
I
do-
only have one on the agenda, that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm looking at Brian, you disagree?
We have, right, so there's votes for different special permits, and then there's filing for one.
Oh, 11.
I guess, I think what they're meaning is that you guys filed for one special permit, but you have,
2 requests, 2 separate votes.
right,
So there's one permit with 2 different reliefs requested,
Correct.
as you specified.
Correct.
Um,
If there's an additional filing fee, I'm happy to pay it. I don't know if that was goofed up.
Okay, so the question would be, depending on,
because last time.
depending on how, you're asking how we would vote on this, is that what you're asking?
Pretty
Ron?
much.
If you wanted to
Are we breaking,
vote,
doing?
if you wanted to vote in favor of a driveway but not in favor of duplexes, how would you do that?
Exactly.
I'm not sure. I would have to think about that. I do see town council with their virtual hand raised, so I may be being saved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You would want to do, 3 separate, it can be one decision, but it has to be 3 separate, sections of that decision, because each special permit has their own findings. So, so it would be similar to when we did a special permit site plan. You would vote on the special permit, you would vote on the site plan. Here, I think you need to vote on each, special permit that's being requested, because they are all under different sections of your zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Alan?
So we would make a motion, probably not tonight, but make a motion for common driveway, make a motion for duplexes, et cetera.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Wayne and Eric, since you're joining remotely, I'm going to put you both on the spot here and just make sure that I'm not ignoring you and seeing if you have any additional questions or comments at this time.
Yes, ma'am. No additional comments at this time.
Thank you. If no other members of the board have questions this time, I'll turn and see if there are any members of the public who have any additional comments or questions for us as a board. Okay. So, again, this is a hybrid meeting, so if there's anybody joining us virtually who would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand or unmute, and we will probably see you in the meeting. I'll turn around and see if there's anybody here in person who would also like to come up to the podium and address the board. Certainly, we have a lot of people here, but not to talk about this.
The next one.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions at this time? I'll go again to the board or to the applicant. Is there any additional steps that you would like the board to take in terms prior to moving forward with any action?
No, sir, I appreciate your time, and I agree with the procedural process that was just identified by town council.
Okay. So,
So we don't want any other information on this water protection district issue with the elevations? You don't want to provide any other information for that?
Good, 30 seconds.
of course.
Just for the moment.
Just don't do stuff. Same with this. It's more tradition. Eric and Wayne, just for your edification, not sure if you can see, but the applicant's just having a brief huddle a little bit off camera here. Not gonna play the joke.
Mr. Boulay, in speaking with Margaret, and again, I don't have the old plan in front of me, I
I'm
don't.
not talking about the old plan, I'm talking about this plan.
Right, but the reference point, so I'm told that we can't change those elevations, so.
I'm talking what the specific language in the Wetland Protection District says that Laura commented on the elevation and only allowing single family in the district. That's,
And the other point that I think that you were, I'm not gonna read your mind, but speaking to is that the elevations are the elevations, because another piece of the Wetland Act is not having fill. So if you're talking an area that isn't affected by the Wetland Protection Act and it's too low for whatever reason, then you would bring it higher. But because it's the wetland area, you can't do that. So the elevations are what they are essentially.
Yeah, and again, Ms. Parker, to your end, I'm not an engineer, so I certainly am not gonna play an engineer. As you're saying, the site is the site. This was approved by Conservation, and you try to go to boards and you try to hear their priority issue, and you address that priority issue. The chances of addressing every issue perfectly is very difficult, and this was honestly the best attempt to get this site, as we said back in September, substantially better than it was in the past. That's the best answer I can give. It may not be satisfactory.
can we pull up the Wetland Protection District file on the screen?
Laura, do you have the citation of that handy or no? If the answer is no, that's,
I think the answer is no, but I might be able to get to it quick.
let me see, so we're talking Wetland Protection District?
Yeah, I have it as 5.5.
So I have it,
Okay.
so I will go ahead and share.
And it's number 23, because it's the one that lists all the,
Okay.
it's
so
not on the
here's-
map, it's just
Here's the
listed
Wetland
by,
Protection District.
yeah.
Are we seeing, okay, we're just seeing that screen, so perfect. So, here we go, so permitted uses. There we go, and this is the line that you pointed to, Laura, which is
Correct.
G, single family home with a frontage lot, and the applicant is asking for relief for duplexes on this lot.
Correct.
Are there other portions that you wanted me to hone in on, or was that the key one?
I'll just read it quickly.
So, in the so here's the no dumping, filling, earth transfer, relocation permitted. Except for these purposes, accordance with special permit, or in accordance with a special permit. So these are by right, or the board can act on a special permit for anything else.
I'm good.
Just below that is the special permit section, can I see that real quick?
Yeah. The planning board may after a public hearing, grant a special permit for use in the district, provided its use or in the underlying zoning district, or accessory to permitted uses. And not find to be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, and not contrary to the purposes of the district or the land. So, again, that ties into the standard of public health, safety, and welfare, which we went through far too many times in our previous discussion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
So,
and members of the board, it's my opinion in light of this specific issue that I have not specifically looked at that clause. Prior to closing, would it make sense that Margaret and I and Sam sit down for a couple of weeks and take a hard look at this to attempt to have a more meaningful answer? I don't know if I can get one, but I'm happy to try. I had a similar issue in town of Norton with this provision on a single-family property, and I remember it was, I just don't remember the exact details. Obviously, this is a duplex issue, and I think I would review it in light of that issue. Does that make sense?
I understand that you're requesting to potentially continue to a future session, yes.
Just so that I understand correctly, so so anything, is it the duplexes in themselves, they have to be is that, are below, can't be below that elevation of 70?
So by right,
If you, I have it up on the screen, but I
Yeah.
realize that you're as far away from the screen as physically
Yeah,
possible
yeah.
at this point. So in the permitted uses for our wetland protection district bylaw, the as of right uses, the only one that is relevant to residential use, there's existing home buildings and uses, including additions to an alteration of existing building, which doesn't apply here, and the construction of a single-family home on a frontage lot, or any other uses by a special permit. So the elevations are not, because it's in the wetland protection district and you're at those lower elevations, that's, I think, Laura, to your point, where it's
yes.
amplified,
So
is maybe the
anything-
wrong word, but
Anything at those lower elevations, below 70?
If you built a single-family home, you don't have to ask us for permission.
But for a duplex,
You have to ask
you
us for
do.
permission.
So just roughly, here's that elevation 70, okay? And it comes down like this. That's why I can't understand how the old roadway and all other houses, they were all going down slope. So this is an improvement elevation-wise compared to the original plan. But even though we're still, there's that elevation 70. So if the duplex itself wasn't within that elevation 70, would that suffice? Let's just say, for example, if this,
so
the foundation got pushed up and out higher than the elevation 70.
So, yeah, I'll say, the board has 7 members, each member has an equal voice, so the question is it the elevation that's the problem, is it the duplex is the problem, is it the combination of both? So, Laura, I think your opinion is that both of them are problems.
It is the combination of the both, of them both. Were you to come to us just asking for a special permit for the common driveway, I would have no issue
With single families.
with single-family homes. And the standards of our special permitting, you had talked about socially and economically desirable, satisfying existing need. The one you did not mention was the applicant has no reasonable alternative to accomplish this purpose. And I would counter that the applicant has a reasonable and more desirable alternative.
Could I just make not a suggestion but a comment?
Sure.
And not be held to it? So we went to comment.
We may remember, but that's, you're free to say whatever you would like.
I'm just an academic open discussion. So the units that are above 70, are they problematic?
The duplex units.
Correct.
I would say the one in the buffer zone at the very end is a little bit problematic or weird to me.
This one?
I-
This is the most out of the elevation issue though.
As far as elevation's not a problem, but it's in the wetland buffer, like a fair lot. Right next to it is a trench which runs a stream connecting underneath the railroad.
All right. So this is why I probably need a couple of weeks, is as the chair said, there's a multitude of issues that tie into this one question.
Sure.
If I could reiterate, if that was a town-owned road and that gave you your frontage and you went the route of single-family homes, you could probably fit at least the 4, if not 5, single-family homes on there. If you reshaped the lots going across the river, they could all be 90,000 square feet. For a single-family home that has 2 acres on it, it can get a farm tax break, so to say. It's 75% off the taxes if you were operating a farm on that parcel. So if you make sure it's 2 acres, then that's advantageous to anybody that lives there.
Another good reason to spend 2 weeks to study.
So, yeah, so I understand your request to potentially continue. Before we do that, it's only fair if there are any other things, as the applicant stated, there's a lot of things that they would like to consider. If there are other things that we want them to consider, we should say them now.
Public access. The waterway, that's huge, historic area, it's very meaningful to the town as a whole.
Okay?
I think if, in reading what I read, if you were to change how you've set it up and those were out of that 70 elevation, that would be fine.
Thank you. Not holding to it,
It's just a comment.
just a comment. Academic discussion.
Okay.
A
And,
little humor is good, right?
So outside of 70 elevation, that's foundation, doesn't include yards,
Right, foundation, yeah.
foundations.
okay, and Eric and Wayne, any additional comments or aspects of the project that you would like the applicant to consider as they think on it more?
No.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Anything further to add? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to continue.
Just a the peer review of the stormwater would be great.
That, whatever we do, I would consider that if we don't have it, is a conditional requirement of whatever decision we would reach.
Understood.
January 23rd, is what I'm looking at? Is there?
I believe that is our next session, yes. January 23rd or into February.
That's right. It's fine.
I'm not gonna be here.
So we will have one member absent for that. Hey,
If I'm discharged, I'll try to be there.
so, we can continue to the 23rd if you would like. If you'd like our February dates, we can look at those as well.
Let's do it. We have the conservation commission.
I think the February date's gonna work best.
Okay.
The February
Yeah.
dates are,
We have the 6th and 27th.
6th looks good for me. Margaret?
So a motion to continue SP 20475 to February 3rd,
Seconded,
February 6th.
6th, sorry.
still seconded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Hearing none. Jim?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Wayne? Eric?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. So we are continued. Thank you very much.
That will be here, we think?
Yes, we'll be here.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
thank you. So, continuing on with our agenda, the next item up, it will be SP 20381 and site plan review SPR-3 for 300 South Washington Street. I'll have the applicant get set up here. But just know that we do have, if you want to take a couple of minutes to do that, we do have an applicant just taking a brief recess, and then a board member taking a brief recess. The applicant come forward and continue. Again, this is, well, my agenda here, SP 20381 and site plan review SPR-3 for 300 South Washington Street. And the applicant is requesting a reduction of required parking spaces for an upcoming site plan. And
Yes.
take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering. With me tonight is attorney Brianna Carrera. She is here to make sure I don't get myself into legal trouble, and if I do, she's gonna pull me right out of it. So you folks, this board has seen this project before. We submitted for special permits for this project in July, and we were before you in August, virtually at that time. Just to recap very quickly, this is a proposed self-storage facility. We are proposing it all indoor. We are proposing a footprint of 22,500 square feet over 3 floors. So the total comes to 67,500 square feet. The Taunton line is right here. This is South Washington Street. This is 495. So this is in the industrial park. Okay, so the 2 special permits that we came before you to request before were one for an industrial building over 10,000 square feet. Argument simply being that we believe there's a need for this kind of use in the town and in this demographic area in general. And frankly, it's in the industrial park, what a better place to put it, right? The other thing was a parking reduction. So your bylaw doesn't have a use for parking requirements for self-storage. The closest thing your bylaw has is an industrial building. If you do the math based on this square footage, it's 1 space per 800 square foot of gross floor area. That means we need 85 spaces. Way more than we practically need for this. So, you know, when we came before, part of the argument is, look, we do have wetlands over here and over here. A portion of this is in buffer zone. It's also in an area of environmental critical concern, which obviously DEP and the Conservation Commission will look at, is in the interim wellhead protection area. All of those things suggest that to the greatest extent that we can, we want to minimize both earthen disturbance and impervious surfaces. So your bylaw has an opportunity to reduce parking by 2 ways. One is by variance from the ZBA. One is by special permit from the board. The special permit for the board does not give a requirement of how much the board can do it by, as opposed to the variance from the ZBA says that the ZBA can reduce by, I think it's up to 50%. So when we came before you before, we proposed 45 parking spaces. That was 53% of what would be required under the bylaw if we use the industrial designation. And at the time, we actually made the comment and said, it's still more than we need. Practically speaking, we just wanted to be respectful and basically didn't want to ask for too much. At that time, there were members of the board who said, look, we understand, if you can justify a further reduction, come back to us and let's talk about it. And the other thing the board had said at the same time was, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think the general feeling was that the board was open to these things, but didn't want to act until they saw a site plan, right? Because the special permit and the site plan kind of go hand in hand. So fast forward to today, we have submitted an application for a site plan review. Okay, so we're continuing 2 special permit hearings and opening a site plan review hearing, basically. And we've revised the layout based on some research that we've gotten. So as part of the research that we had to do to finally make a solid determination of how many parking spaces that we need, we did engage an architect, Coldwell Group, excuse me, and they did a unit determination for the building. Okay, so the overall unit determination, and I can go through different sizes and stuff, it doesn't really factor into what we're talking about, but they're coming up with 468 units for the building, right? Good number of units. So the way parking demand is determined for these facilities is by 2 methods. One, the Institute of Traffic Engineers does it based on square footage. And what they say is that you need 1/10 of a parking space for every 1,000 square foot. Okay, excuse me, yes, 1/10 of a parking space for every 1,000 square foot, which basically means when you do the math, if we do it based on square footage alone, through that guidance, we need 6.75 parking spaces. Okay, round to 7. There is other credible data out there from tripgeneration.org and some other studies that we found from other projects that we worked with. They basically equate to 1 space per 50 units. So if you do the math that way, this project would require 9.4 parking spaces in the peak demand. That's when this thing is completely serviceable. What we've proposed at this time is 17. And the reason we picked 17 is, one, it gave us a little buffer. It's about 200% of both of those numbers, give or take. And it laid out well. When we originally did this, we had this side intact. We had some more parking back here toward the buffer zone. And we had some parking on each side of this drive aisle. Again, more impervious surfaces in the buffer zone. We dropped those, right? Thinking that that's a Concom benefit. They're gonna like that. It's an overall benefit given that we're in the ACEC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that said, bear in mind, we still have designed this site with the ability to put them back if we ever need them. So to the extent that we find out that demand is more than we anticipated and there's an issue, or the building changes hands, 20 years, 25 years down the road, it becomes a different use, we have the ability to backtrack, make a few changes on the site, get some more parking in here. So we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. This drive aisle that you see here is where it was positioned on the original plan. We didn't bring it back in, A, to allow for room for parking here, and B, to allow for the fire apparatus to get around the truck, around the site. The fire department has reviewed this on the special permit level. They indicated that they were satisfied they can get all the way around the site, so that's good. So that's kind of where we are. Now, where we're going. We're in this chicken and egg thing again. As you know, in Norton, Concom holds the stormwater permit. We have to go to Concom for work in the buffer zone to begin with. But we also need to go to them for the stormwater permit. So, depending on what this board was to say, yes or no to the parking reduction is going to drastically influence how we design the site to deal with stormwater. So what we're hoping to do, and like I say, I know it's generally this board's preference not to vote on site plan review until they've got a clean peer review letter from the Conservation Commission consultant, who would presumably be Pat Brennan in this case. So what we would like to do, preferably, if the board is open to it, is come to some sort of definitive determination on the special permits that would then allow us to submit to the Conservation Commission, go through that process with them, continue this matter until we're through that, come back to this board, incorporate any final comments, be nice and clean and done. What I can tell you beyond all of this, the layout hasn't changed much from what you've seen, so I won't bore you with too many comments about that. But with regard to the drainage on the site, I know it is Concom purview, but I'm sure there's some questions about it. So we have been able, first we did test pits out there. They were witnessed by John Thomas. We have very good soil conditions out there, almost too good, to the point the soil, stormwater infiltrates so rapidly that we need additional treatment and additional recharge. We have surface basins proposed for portions of the driveway. This basin takes all of the rooftop runoff, so all of that's going back into the ground. And we have a water quality unit in a subsurface infiltration area that takes this little corner of the parking lot here. Big takeaway from this is we meet and or exceed all requirements for water quality by at least 10%. They need to be 80 in this zone. We're over 90 on everything. And these basins do not overflow in a 100-year storm event. That means that all that water is going right back in the ground. The only time these overflows get activated is if there's back-to-back major storms. So that is, and it was a product of, wanting to be responsible and having to control runoff from the site. Just de facto, it all came together. It actually worked out very well. So that's where we are. We proposed full erosion control plans. We've got details. We've got the whole thing. But certainly, rather than drone on, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, and answer any questions that you folks have.
So just from a procedural standpoint, you're looking for official votes on filings at this point, or are you looking for we're in agreement, thumbs up, straw poll kind of action?
At the very least, we would like that. Certainly, if we're comfortable to officially wrap up the special permits and vote those, that would be great. It's just one thing to cross off the list. But at least the straw poll to get us to Concom before we come back here would be very good.
I have a question. Is the water runoff plan interchangeable with the parking you have now and with also with the parking that's
Sure.
required?
So this covers all of the parking that we have now. If we were to do a few spaces up here, this catch basin would catch it and it would fit in here. It would be good. If we were to do some more spaces along here, I would have to add a couple more catch basins and probably do some subsurface infiltration at that time. We just obviously, right now, there's nothing proposed there that's paved, nothing to catch, so we're not proposing it. So yes, moving forward, we've left dimensionally enough room for everything that we need, but we would have to make some further tweaks to the site design.
But it would all be feasible within the site plan, within the site itself.
Yes, it would.
Not that I don't trust it. Could you give us that backup? I don't see it in our files.
What backup?
Or
I'm
you
sorry.
just quoted for the parking?
The methodology.
Oh, I did submit, well, we did submit a letter yesterday. I have copies of it. I don't know if they made their way. And I can supply the technical backup that goes with this after the meeting as well. But let me pass these out now, just so you folks have them.
Not that I don't trust you, I don't trust anybody.
Of course, I wouldn't either.
Same thing with the fire department, we need, I like letters from them, not
Of
just saying what
course.
to them,
It's your job to make sure I'm not full of it, right?
at least in front of us.
But yeah, so,
And again, I can upload the support documentation that we based all this off of if need be.
Thank you, yeah.
Eric, I'll say I'm not an engineer, so I'm going to ask this of you, and if you say this is a dumb idea, please tell me that.
Okay.
If the stormwater is going to be peer reviewed, is there a way to, as you say, verify the ability to treat additional stormwater from the, we're gonna build all of the parking? Is there a level of, yes, this math works, that can be done with the peer review, or does it require you to do the whole thing twice?
So there's two ways that we can answer that. One, the only way to be bulletproof is to do it all, right? Design the whole site, have all the numbers. But we can certainly, based on what we know, with the receptiveness of the soils that we have out here and the depths of the groundwater and things like that, we can make some pretty reasonable assumptions and probably get to a point where, you know, presuming it's Pat, I'll just use his name for example, that we could look at each other and say, yeah, this is gonna work.
Okay.
So we can, certainly something that we can take a look at.
Yeah, if that's something that can be incorporated into the stormwater review, that would, I think, be helpful. I think, when I, speaking for myself as one person, when I look at a parking reduction, to go with, okay, parking reduction works for the use now, as you said, the building changes hands. Can you get to B without causing all sorts of problems?
Sure.
Could you just draw that out, could we just get another plan showing it all,
Yeah.
too?
Give me just a second.
But I think that if the peer review is able to go with, yes, you can get there with relatively,
Weightlifting.
yeah, exactly, then that's the level of,
So this plan, excuse me, doesn't draw out the stormwater detention systems that we would need. But it does show if we were to, A, put these stalls back in and the stalls back here, that's what that would look like.
What would that be the number, what number would we be up to?
That would get us to 45, which honestly, for a warehouse use, pretty reasonable, right? But if we had to go full compliance with the bylaw, we would end up building out another section over here with a third curb cut and another section over here. If it ever went to that degree, we would be doing pretty substantial stormwater changes because we'd have to take our
Yeah,
surface
both the
basins
basins are
and
gone,
put them
yeah.
underground. Now, am I confident that we can do that if need be with the soils that we have? Yes, I am. Is it gonna cost? Sure, it's gonna
A lot of
cost.
money, yeah.
So the price tag would have to be right for it
yeah.
at the end of the day.
So we would, so, I think that tells us the A, B, and C scenarios. A is what you've shown us as the, what we think we need. B is the, we can get here with relatively light work, and C is the, would need to go the full compliance with, I mean, warehouses are generally not as packed as they once were.
Yeah, you know, I'll be
Users and
honest,
drivers.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'll be honest, if I was either the applicant or the engineer advising somebody who was trying to convert this to a different use, I would suggest we go to the 45 spaces, right? Because you probably realistically don't need more than that. Obviously, you would have to prove the numbers and all of that stuff, but I would encourage them to come back to this board for that reduction before moving forward.
I could just make a comment. I do see your analysis and the methodologies, and I appreciate that, thank you. I was roommates with somebody who worked at the office of a self-storage facility while I was in college. And by far, the worst days of the year were the 1st and the 30th of the month, because those were the dates that renters either had to move in or had to move out and needed places to put things.
That makes sense.
Or retrieve things. Based on that, 15 spaces, not including the ADA spaces, for 468 units
And employees.
and employees seems really unreasonable, especially when you take into account a lot of these renters are probably renting box trucks and are not going to be comfortable with them and are more than likely going to take up more than one parking space. It just seems very inadequate.
Sure, understood. I understand the concern. Let me say to start with, we do have a loading zone back here for box trucks.
Yeah.
Idea being box and bigger. So idea being that we'll be able to back these folks up over here and not take up these spaces, but still understood.
Yeah, even like the U-Haul trailers.
Right, understood.
Nobody can back
Sure.
those things up anywhere.
Sure.
And we don't, you don't really have the ability, there's no,
Q.
yeah. there-
Right, so what we've actually done, and I should have said this, so we have included some signage here that stops trucks from entering here and directs them to go this way. Idea being that trucks will come in, come around the building here, queue on this side, pull up, back in, and then come back out.
So there's a loading door there.
There is a loading door there, yes. And the part of the reason we chose to go that way, one, if you come this way, you can't get to the loading door, you're nosing in. But two, if you go this way, you do have the queue. We can fit a few cars in there, and we did leave that drive aisle at a minimum of 24 feet, so that way people can still pass. As far as employees are concerned, in talking with the owners or prospective owners, we're not expecting any more than 3 employees at any given time, and even that's probably more. But understood, a couple of things that we can do. If the board feels strongly that 17 is too few, we can add some back in the areas that we talked about. We can beef up our traffic demand report and get you guys some more information on that. We've certainly got options.
I think I would feel more comfortable with a design similar to the original one, where you had parking in 2 different locations. I understand that the older design had a central entrance to the building, which we've had to eliminate for a stormwater basin. So I'm assuming the door on the left is exit only at this point?
Yeah, so main entrance, and it's just a product of the architecture. Main entrance, at the time, we hadn't engaged an architect yet, this is just something I dreamed up to do. Main entrance to the building is gonna be here. This entrance is only where our utility rooms are, so that access out exterior to the building. But everything will go through here, we have a fire entrance over here, there's an elevator in the middle of the building, and then loading docks over here. I shouldn't say docks, I should say bay doors, because we're not talking tailboard, we're ground level.
I like the, what is it, 45 spots?
Mm-hmm.
I liked that plan. I did like the front door with a walkway in front. It would look a lot nicer than a utility door facing the road, even though it's in the industrial park.
I think it would be more appealing to a customer as well, because at this point, if you're in a 3rd floor of the top left location, you're hauling all of your stuff from that parking lot to that corner. I understand there'll be they have dollies and things like that. That's a haul.
Go
I do
halfway
like
to the
that.
elevator and then the other halfway.
Yeah.
I do like to imagine what the future use is gonna be already. Like,
Yeah.
if it does switch hands and the parking's already in place, that's more efficient in a way than doing work twice.
It is in an ACEC and things like that, so I think
I
the
don't know
applicant's
if
position of
45
trying to,
is the right number, but I think more than, at this point, we're looking at 12 if you've got 3 employees.
Well, maybe what we can do, perhaps, maybe we split the difference, and we put some more back in along the building here. I think we can get another 10 over there, or so, roughly, right? So now, what we've done is the area where we've added the pavement for extra parking is as far away from the wetland as we can put it on that side, right? So Concom's gonna like that a little bit better. I really, and I understand future build out and wanting to get things done now, but I do feel like if we include stalls up here and we include stalls here, it is practically more than we need. The idea, we talk about what happens if it ever changes hands, kind of as a fail-safe. The idea is that it's very successful and these people own it forever and it's always a self-storage unit. So I think the likelihood of needing more parking at any time in the future because of a change of use is very, very low. So maybe we could agree to maybe split the difference on that if the board's amenable to it.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 is where I'm thinking.
Okay.
Just,
I like the blueprint here, that if you can add them on that spot and you get 10 more, and it
That's
puts you
fine.
at 27, I think that's.
I would say the original plan, like the middle plan
Mm-hmm.
with the 45 lots, but without the side facing the wetlands.
Without this side.
Yeah.
So maybe the
But I-
ones through
but I
here and a
still like
couple
the-
up top possibly.
Yeah, and I imagine over time, building more spaces going further into wetlands is gonna become more regulated. So
The
in
only
future
thing
that-
about adding more parking spots on this end, if you're having to travel from here to there to back on that side, like I like the central parking up front with maybe just a little bit of runoff, just so that people are parking at the main entrance and then they have the one shot. They're not backtracking both ways. Like I like the parking all up front.
If I may, on the blueprint there, it looks like the hallway actually touches the exterior wall on that far end. I don't know what it would take to put a door in on that side.
It's
So
a
we
fire.
Yeah, there's a fire door here, there's a staircase here. This is, the white is the hallway. There are units along the end here.
So that would,
And along the front escape here as well.
Are they gonna be able to gain entrance from outside through a fire door though, or wouldn't they have to go in through the main?
They'll have to go through the main. That fire door will be locked.
Right.
That'd be a security issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that fire door would only be accessible from open bar on the inside.
Is rearranging the entrance from the side to being in the front and giving the building a sort of a facade out of question?
It's certainly something that we can talk to the architect about in the team. They honestly, they know a little bit more about the building layout than I do. Let me take that question back to them. The other thing we might be able to do, even if we can't move the door there, we might be able to change the facade treatment, faux door, maybe a couple full windows, something like that, just so it looks nice from the street. And maybe we can hide the mechanical entrances a little better.
obviously, we're not gonna design inside a self-storage facility tonight.
We're trying pretty hard.
We are, yes. I think the core issue that you brought tonight is the parking. So, from a, I'm gonna call it a straw poll or just general feeling of the board, do we feel that adding the additional spaces on the left side of the building, approximately 10 to be laid out, are we prepared to give the applicant guidance that this is a direction that we were generally in agreement with, assuming that things proceed as we might expect? And if we are not, then we should state otherwise.
I'm fine with it as is. I think the more you add to the left, people that are trying to storage stuff, if they're having to park to the left, they're gonna have to go drop off the stuff at the loading dock, exit, go back, park on the left, walk to the bay. I like it where it's all to the right.
I'm just afraid it's inadequate.
I feel like it needs more spaces, to be honest. Like I said, without that line closest to the wetlands would be okay, but I'd like to see the rest of it.
So you want the 10 to the left, but you don't need anything across the aisle, across the driveway.
Yeah, and even those back spaces might be worth having. Like there should be room for parking, box trucks, the unexpected.
That's the space for Joe who's helping his buddy unload the U-Haul.
People that are not gonna stick in a queue or maintain as much order.
But you guys got this information for these recommendations that we asked you to get through the storage units, right?
We did, yes, we did. We looked at several studies for similar facilities. We checked the IGE parking demand generation data. We checked some other.
And you're over 200% on what their recommendations
Right around, yeah.
with what he has now.
If I can speak to, I did have a case in Taunton, I know it's a completely different area, but it was a building over 100,000 square feet, so it was more units. And the traffic consultant for that case had mentioned that during peak hours, the most they would need during peak hours is 11 spaces for that size building. I know it's a completely different area, this is industrial, and that was in a neighborhood, but it is just something to reference as far as the square footage of the building, that's how it's calculated.
Can you identify what peak means, and is it taking into account specific days of the month?
So,
Yes, and I would have to look back through the data to know exactly what the peak is. But for example, when the ITE publishes this data, they look at the peak parking demand, and it does take into account not only those times of the month, but the period of the day and or the day of the week when these are usually most active. So in most traffic analysis, there's a morning peak, there's an evening peak, and there's a Saturday peak. When they do the parking data, they look at all of that and business trends at the same time.
so that case was actually a storage unit facility that had already been in place for several years, and they were doing an addition, a major addition to the building. So I think they also took into account the data that they already had available from that building being in use for so many years, and added that to the analysis as well. But it is the days of the week, the times of the day, things of that nature, to establish a peak.
So, yeah, and again, thank you for providing the IT data. So coming in yesterday, I don't think the board has really had time to really digest it.
Yeah, and I apologize, we had submitted the site plan review package just before the holiday break, and frankly, thought I had more time to update the special permit package, and I just got away from it. I became one with the couch for the holiday season, so.
Understood. Okay, so what I'm hearing from the members of the board is that there's a desire for those 10 or so spots on the left side of the building, and maybe some in the back, but maybe not the full originally 45 proposed.
Get me to 30 and I'm happier, even just from, if this doesn't succeed as a going concern, it's gonna be really hard to sell with 17 parking spaces for a building that size.
But there is space for more. That's
There's what?
the site would allow for the space for more, but
Yes.
understand.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it does now presently.
yes,
To Steve's point,
if there's additional
a change in
regulation,
a
That's
law or
true.
regulation, it may not.
that's true. So, I'll do this in the opposite. Are there any board members who feel that we want to see the applicant go above and beyond that high 20s, low 30s number that we've been talking about before they'll give a thumbs up here? Okay. I'm not hearing anything else.
Okay.
Understanding that we have additional things to look at for this project, is there anything else does that give you what you want this evening? Is there anything else that you'd like us to go through?
Unless you guys want to approve the whole thing, I mean. Get a try, right? No, I think that definitely gives us some guidance. And I guess the next question, and I'll defer to you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. So really, I'm expecting we're not finalizing this process, whatever the outcome may be, until we get through the Concom review, right? Because we want stormwater to look at this. More than likely.
There's a level of boards working in parallel.
Sure.
Whoever approves something first, there's always a little bit of a game of chicken with that.
Yes,
But
yes.
understanding that we've given you the direction, and if we feel that Concom is close, then maybe we'll get to
Maybe,
the
yeah.
point where, yeah.
So just thinking about if we continue and how far we go out, I'm expecting right now it wouldn't make sense to come back in 2 weeks, or maybe even a month, because we would still have to notify for Concom. That's gonna be 3 weeks before we get on a meeting and get a peer review and things like that. So If we're gonna talk about continuing, I'm thinking 6-ish weeks, maybe 3 meetings out, does that make sense?
Okay. So if we're looking, that would put us, are we saying end of February or early March?
Yeah, so.
March 12th.
6 would be the 27th.
6 would be
It's a very
February
special day,
27th.
be careful of that.
Why don't we pencil it for that, and if we're not
What's the,
making progress, we'll,
can always
we
continue
can
it if
always
we need
continue.
to.
Yeah, we'd like to keep it moving if we can.
okay, so the date specified was February the 27th. Is there any further questions or comments?
I got one shooting for the stars comment. What is the potential of adding in a public easement over the wetlands area, even if that was contingent on not being in effect until after the exchange of ownership?
Well, we'd have to have a conversation with the owner about that. It's something that I can commit to today. What I will say is that this wetland is not a pond. It's nothing where anyone's gonna really, you're not gonna hunt there because it's kind of sandwiched in an industrial area. It's not very nice looking. So I don't know that it would be super valuable. And there may be concerns, whereas this is an industrial and business use with liability. But those are my initial thoughts. I don't want to be a naysayer. Let me have that conversation and keep it in mind.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're looking for a motion to continue to February the 27th.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Jim?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well.
Great. Thank you all for your time. We
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
your time.
Always appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. And we are now on to our final meeting of the agenda this evening for 0 West Main Street. My laptop has died, so I don't have the permit number in front of me.
Year one.
SPR 1-1. Okay. With the owner applicant SRO Development. And this is an application for 2 18-room boarding houses. I believe I see somebody who's just come on camera for the Zoom meeting. So I'm going to assume that they're representing the applicant. If they would like to go ahead and introduce themselves and go forward, we'll start the discussion on this application.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Larkin. I'm representing SRO Development for this project before you guys. This is actually the first time I've been before this board, so I'm open to understanding the process here with you guys. This is kind of a first meet late, so what I'd like to try to do tonight is just kind of give an overview, and of course we'll assume we'll have peer review throughout the process, and then kind of create a step-by-step process where we move through each and every issue we can address as we move forward on this throughout the hearings to come forward.
Sure.
Going to go through, can I share the screen? Is that
Sure, you
something?
should have the ability to share the screen. And yeah, I look forward to an introduction about the project. If there's anything specific as we look at the application that you feel the board that should consider related to Dover uses or anything like that. Here we go.
Yep, and so this is the property here. It's this project was we're proposing to develop 2 parcels at 0 West Main Street. We have lot 1, which consists of 61,459 square feet, and lot number 2, which is 87,064 square feet. They're known as, the town right now is maps 2 parcels 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and the property consists initially right now is vacant land. So the applicant was before the board back in November 28, 2023, the request for an A&R plan, which was approved by this board, revising the 3 lots to 2 lots, which are we're seeing right here today. The zoning we're in here is zoning village commercial BC, and what we're proposing here, and what we'll see right here, and what we did here today is to bring both parcels together because it's in essence the same kind of project. There's 2 18-bedroom rooming houses on each of the lots. So each lot is a 1 18-bedroom rooming house. So a rooming house is allowed as a use in the BC zone. And while there's little language in the Northern zoning bylaws or the plan bylaws or Norton bylaws in general, there is proposed rooming house would be subject to Mass General Laws Chapter 140, which details licensing requirements, and 105 CMR 410, which details state sanitary code requirements. So there are extensive code requirements which detail the requirements for how these buildings will be operated. And moreover, just for the board's sake, we will have a full-time property management company managing these buildings for the owner once it's up and operational. So as you see in front of us right now is the stormwater management plan. So as part of the process, there is wetlands on the site and there's wetland resources. So the applicant has been in front of the Conservation Commission and has approved, has an approved ANRAD. But we also completed the find the notice of intent before the board. That hearing actually closed last night, and the Conservation Board shall render an order of conditions at that next hearing. So what the Conservation Board had a peer review with Pat Brennan, I think you guys know him, and the following plans, engineering plans he reviewed were stormwater management plan, watershed plans, grading plans, sediment and erosion control plans, and the proposed construction details. So that's all peer reviewed over the last months, and they met all the requirements, and that's why we were able to close that hearing last night.
Okay.
So the reason we're here today, of course, is we're requiring site plan approval pursuant to section 175-15.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the big question here. So you're proposing this as a under the use tables of a tourist or rooming house for village commercial where it is allowed by right.
Yes, it's allowed as a right. Yes,
So
correct.
the line item in that chart is tourist or rooming house.
Correct.
Are you aware of the definition of tourist home in the Norton bylaws?
Yes, but we're not a tour somewhere where it says tourist or rooming house. So we are looking at a rooming house.
So, just to share, the use table lists just tourist or rooming house in one line. The definition of a tourist home in the definition is a single-family dwelling adapted to provide room and board or rooms alone for up to 10 transients at one time, in addition to providing permanent living accommodations to one family resident therein. I understand that you're looking to be classified as something other than that definition.
Which is the rooming house.
Under a definition that is not necessarily defined within our bylaws, correct?
Correct. Yes. So we look at the Mass General Laws to look at what the definition of rooming house is, and that's pretty explanatory as well.
Okay.
I can pull that up for you guys if you want to do that.
Tim, may I address that?
Sure. If you'd like to pull up the Mass General Law definition of that, happy to review that as well.
Do you want to be submitted to the board, or you want to keep on? Do you want to, as part of our pull up and look at it, or do you want me to submit it to the board as part of the process?
If you have it available, we could put it up on the screen. If you do not, and you'd like to forward it just as a reference to the board and follow up, we can do that. Yes.
Yeah, I'll pull it up, and let me pull up, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I can pull up and forward it to to Brian there as part of this whole process.
Okay.
But it'll be, as you said, Chair, this is just kind of an overview today, and if this is the big issue right now, let's try to get the up front, meeting, and then soon we can hopefully move forward.
Sure. I know we had, Steve, you had a question or a comment to that point?
Yeah, is there going to be nursing on site?
Nursing? Do you mean by nursing?
As in medical care?
Yeah, is there? Are there patients?
No. This is like for a semi-professional person who is like, living here, they have a job, they live somewhere else and they have a job locally, they stay here for, a year at a time, do different project or people, different kind of situation, forced wife, whatever.
So that would be
students, anyone could live there.
Understood.
That would be a hotel or a motel.
So you feel that would be more appropriate to the definition of hotel or motel?
I believe so. As far as a tourist or rooming house, you need to have it be a single-family home, and it's up to 11 guest bedrooms. If there's no single family living there, this is not a tourist or rooming house. If there's no nursing on site, it is not a nursing or convalescent home. So it would be a hotel or motel.
I think there's confusion with the definition of a tourist home. I agree with the chair, the tourist home was looking at this, and it's like, the definition of, you know, is distinct from that, and doesn't the owner or operator to be living on the unit of the building.
Okay. And
I can provide that information, you know, unfortunately I haven't got it right now, but I can provide that as part of the hearing before that point, we review it.
okay.
You did bring it up with building inspector, he talked about the tourist home, so I think they talked to the town council, so I'm fine also to be able to talk to town council in the meantime, that's not an issue.
Understood. So, understanding that is obviously a critical issue about whether this is an allowed use in that zone and on that site. If the process is already in motion, and Brian, do you know if there's already a request to town council, or is this a proposal from Nick? I think his email says they have reached out, correct? That's what he said in the email right there. It's right up there in front of me. So it says we reached out. So
The response from Amy.
okay. So we do have a response from town council. Okay.
Let me just check.
Would it make sense, Mr. Chairman, to kind of just do it kind of a very general overview, and then kind of just continue to address this point here, and then address this by the next hearing? At least that was a lot of people hearing right now. So if you have a general idea of what's going on, and then we could address this
So,
hearing.
just to specify, I can see that there was a comment submitted in the Zoom chat, possibly from somebody on your team. As I stated at the outset of the meeting, anything submitted into the chat is not part of the record. So just to clarify, we did reach out to town council in relation to this. We asked, sorry? Yes, so, we have so the comment was that we have a developer asking for two boarding houses of 18 rooms. The bylaw does not have addition for boarding houses, it is grouped with tourist house in the use table. So the building code has a boarding house defined as up to 16 rooms. So that's some of the initial questions that we asked of town council to sum up, and then the response from town council was does not provide. I think we need additional clarity from town council on our end.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fine.
So I apologize that I'm doing this a little bit live with you, because I don't think I had this. So this has
what
been
would you
going on
recommend?
just in advance of the meeting. So
Would you rather not do a kind of general review, or just do kind of continuance address that outside of the hearing?
I think we can continue, but with the understanding that if the opinion that we get from town council is that you would need to meet the definition of that we have it for a tourist home compared to our use table, then everything that you're presenting is probably for naught. I think we're on the same page on that, but I think we can get that and clarify in follow-up. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Larkin?
You know, so I think we'll get up with Nick and the building commissioner and
It'll have nothing to do with the building commissioner. It'll have to do with our discussion with town council. So
is that something that could be part of that discussion? So we could all.
I think that if there are questions where we need clarification from you, I like to think that I'm capable of hitting CC on an email.
Right. So what I'll do is I'll submit whatever data information I have, and that can be then you can be
Sure.
brought to
Thank you.
Brian, and then can be brought to town council.
So to that point, I will make a motion for the board that to whatever degree is required, that we ask town council for clarification on this point. Can I have a second to that effect?
Second.
Okay, and any further discussion on the motion to officially have town council weigh in on this aspect? Okay, and I'll go through the roll as much as it pains everybody to go through this process. Jim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Alan,
I want to abstain, but I'll say yes.
you can abstain, I
I'm
don't
going to
object.
abstain, because I
Okay.
refuse to comply to that.
Wayne,
Yes.
Eric,
It's too late.
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So we are 6, 0, and 1 to officially get town council's opinion to whatever degree is required, and now that's done. So we will, if you're already planning forward the definition from Mass General Law, we can include that in our review, and allow for a specific determination, to that effect. So that would cover, I think, all of the points related to, is this an as-of-right use in this zone? And putting it under the site plan review process. So you've given the general overview. I know in your packet you had some designs of the properties. I'm not sure if you want to go into those now, if there are additional aspects that you wanted to go through. And once you go through your initial presentation, I'll see if members of the board have additional questions, and then go to members of the public who'd like to make comments.
And the thing you say, the question here is, kind of a crucial question. Does it make sense, as you said, maybe just to kind of table this, and continue after we get that issue addressed?
That is one path that we could take. If it is the path you would like to take, we can do that. My question with that is that I know that we have probably
A lot of people here.
half a dozen people here in person, maybe a little more, and a bunch of people joining via Zoom. And I do want to make sure that they have an opportunity to share any comments that they have. And if your presentation is able to answer some of those, what is this going to be comments, that might be helpful.
Okay, that makes
If
sense.
you want to, I'm going to ask them to speak regardless of how much you present. How's that?
Okay. Not a problem.
Okay,
So do we continue on then?
yes, please.
As I said, we've talked about the conservation, it's gone through the order condition, it'll be assuming getting order conditions within the next hearing. And this was all peer reviewed, so this whole project will be peer reviewed from Brandon and the conservation, and that's addressed there. So let me look at the building here. So what the building consists of, the proposal consists of 2 single buildings with 18 bedrooms per building. So let me show you what a typical unit would look like. I'll zoom out. So here's what a typical bedroom would look like. You've got your bathroom with the shower, toilet, sink. You've got the bedroom area with a desk beside it, also a closet, a second sink with a refrigerator beside it, and a dresser with an area for the TV above it. What you'll see, if you scroll down, each floor includes a common kitchen area, oven, hot plates and stuff, and a sink for eating and dining right there as well. Also, we also include as a common area also for laundry for the residents. Scroll down to the first floor, you can see the laundry area for folding, all that stuff. As you move into the building here on the left hand side, you come in the vestibule, which are packages in the foyer. We have building maintenance with stall shovels all set up for as well. We also include part of the.
Is this what it's all about?
If there are other people on the meeting who are waiting to speak, I'd ask that you please remain on mute, and I will call each of you individually. Thank you.
And what we also include part of the building is one of the units that will be ADA accessible as well. So that's a whole specifically designed unit specifically to meet those requirements. So the proposal will include extensive landscaping and dark sky compliant lighting in accordance with the bylaw. There'll be adequate snow storage and will be provided on the properties. Household refuse will be disposed of by individual waste containers for each resident. Connections for the existing power is West Main Street. And the property will be serviced by an on-site private septic system. This is by the Board of Health, but we have done testing out there on site, and it just has a final design that needs to be submitted, and private electricity utilities will be provided. So as I said, my determination is we are within the village commercial zone, and the use of rooming houses is allowed use in this zone. We have a traffic study submitted, and traffic capacity on West Main Street has shown that West Main Street has sufficient capacity to handle traffic when the new units are proposed, and that was submitted as part of the application of the board. We have parcel side and frontage. As I said, it consists of 2 lots. Lot 1 with a 61,459 square feet, and lot 2, 87,064 square feet, which exceeds the minimum area requirement. Also, lot 1 has 259.18 feet of frontage, and lot 2 166.7 feet of frontage, both meeting the minimum 120 feet frontage requirement by the bylaw. We have the dimensional requirements, and I'll go back to that. I can show you right here. Zoom it up for you guys. It's not big enough for everyone. See here, I can zoom it up a bit bigger.
The board has it available in our file folders, so, yeah.
So the boat building, so the building in the lot number 1 is setback around 59, nearly 60 feet from West Main Street. Meets all the side rear setback requirements. The building height is less than the 45 feet, is 45 feet, so it meets the requirements of 3 stories high. And the second lot in building, which would be in essence lot number 2, it's 16 feet from. There's a part of this whole project. There's a separate single family home there, and what the engineer looked at is 16 feet from them, but technically it's 16 plus 122, so it's 138 feet from West Main Street, so it is pretty much set back. The votes will be regarding also with space. We'll need open spaces in northern bylaws, parking spaces, as we will see right here. The determined that 18 was required, 18 bedrooms, which we proposed 19, and second building on lot number 2 with 18 bedrooms, 18 required, proposed up to 46. And we'll also include EV parking as well on the property. As I said, town water and private septic system, and we're finalizing the septic design as part of the project. Impact on the abutting neighbors and adjacent neighborhoods. We're looking to do vegetative screening, fencing, and positive aspects of the building to look and make it look nice. Ultimately, with the variety of housing stock in the town, this development will increase the variety of housing stock in the community. So that's kind of a general overview.
And it helps any housing.
So any questions that you guys have to ask,
Sure.
I can take notes.
Thank you, and I'll go to members of the board for questions for the applicant first. And again, I'll ask if anybody who's on the Zoom meeting who'd like to speak, please raise your virtual hand. But please try to stay on mute so that we don't start talking over each other without realizing it. Thank you. Additional questions from members of the board for the applicant at this time?
I just got one that going to start coming up more and more as far as parking. I know you said you have EV parking, but something like this, you're going to need food delivery and package delivery parking. And I'm kind of more food delivery. So what would be laid out by the door? Where would someone delivering packages park? Since there's only one extra parking spot.
They pull up front. I mean, I can review that with the engineer, and then we can identify it on the property on the plan. That's not a problem to do that.
Okay.
That's all my tired brain thought of.
Okay. Additional questions from members of the board? Wayne and Eric, I know I can't give you the same eye contact, so I'm going to put you on the spot here again to ask if you have any additional comments related to the initial presentation here.
None at this time.
Okay.
I'm good for the moment as well.
Okay.
I got a, I don't know, maybe a comment or what. I wonder about the choppiness of the parking lot for lot 1, instead of just going across the front, that the parking actually goes towards the wetland. I'm not sure why any of it really needs to be positioned that far backwards.
Septic.
So,
The septic, yeah.
Yeah, the septic, that's correct. The septic, let me see if I can get the next plan popping up. So you see in the plan, the septic will be set up right here. That area that you, from lot number 1.
okay. So
That
there's,
answered my question, because I don't want 2 curb cuts on this property. I want a common driveway.
I was gonna ask how the curb cut lines up with the street across 123. The curb cut to the left, how much does it line up with, is that Oak?
It's gonna be oak. And we've got 2 lots over, or 1 lot over from that, we've just approved village commercial with apartment over a dental office, and we've approved at the end of Oak, a duplex with a circular driveway. And we've got an acute angle southbound taking a right onto Oak, which no bus nor anything larger than a pickup truck can take if there's somebody coming out of Oak Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have our traffic engineer who did do the traffic analysis and provide sightlines. So the sightlines on the property are very good along here, and I can have the traffic engineer speak to that as well. Initially, this was 3 lots, so it would have been 3 curb cuts. Now we brought it down to 2 lots, so that's we're looking at the 2 curb cuts. So we've eliminated 1 curb technically that could be allowed on this property.
Yeah.
If I could.
It would be, I would be interested to see if you can put Oak Street just on the layout of the driveways, just to show where that lines up, and if that's going to create some cross action, or if it's lined up directly opposite, that's probably, I assume that would be ideal from a traffic standpoint, and if that's something that
As long as
you want to
it's-
ask Mr. Dirk for, that's fine too.
Instead of, if they're gonna serve the same purpose, what if it was 1 building, hypothetically, with 1 septic system?
I'm assuming that 1 building would not fall under the definition of a boarding house.
Neither does the 18, as
Well-
far as like I'm concerned with our bylaw.
So I think-
Setting that
So,
aside,
sure.
but yeah.
What we're doing at the moment right now is we're getting to 18 bedrooms from it. So what it allows us to set is 2,000 gallons. So if you did most bedrooms require 110 gallons per bedroom per day. So if you divide up 2,000 by 110, you got 18.18. And what it is to go once you hit a threshold of 2,000 gallons. The next level, anything over the next level, it's a more advanced system. So that's why we've kind of limited the threshold of the number of bedrooms right now based on the septic system rather than going to the next level kind of system. So it's something I could talk to the engineer about, but that's where we are right now with this initial design.
But if that's what you propose, that's what we have in front of us right now.
So that's correct.
Okay. Any members of the board have additional comments before I go to members of the public?
I was gonna say, again, the 18 as the threshold, if this doesn't meet our definition for tourist and rooming house, which I don't think it does,
Then it's
this would
a
be,
special permit.
it would be like a hotel.
It
And
wouldn't be allowed by right in this zone.
It'd be a special
so
permit, yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be doing a whole different process.
Yes, correct.
Who is running the building? From what I can see, a licensee or a license is needed. Who is the licensee?
So SRO, the owner will be the licensee, but they were going to get a property management company to manage the whole property, just as you have in any kind of building like this kind of thing. So have a management company address the residents, trash, snow, all that stuff would be through a property management company.
And you mentioned there are specific requirements for that type of use under the state law, so,
That's correct, yes.
okay. So, if there are no further comments, I'll ask if any members of the public wanted to come up and speak. I know we have some virtually and some here in person. So if you're here.
Chairman, anyone want to speak?
Sure. So I'll ask, if whoever wants to come up and try and come in some kind of order. I'm not gonna make everybody line up, we're like we're in elementary school, but, I see the yellow shirt,
I'm a middle school teacher in a different town.
yeah, so, But yeah, so if you wanna go first, and I'll
Sure.
try and go back and forth with anybody who's joining us virtually as much as possible. If you can raise your virtual hand, I will know that you're in queue. And I'll just say, direct any questions to the board. If we can answer them, we will. If it's something where we need to go to the applicant for follow-up, we'll do that too. But we're not getting to a cross-examination, that kind of thing, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dave Allen. I live on Power Street. My property backs up to this area. And my concern is the tenants of the building. And it's not clear to me exactly who the tenants are, but in my opinion, if you take 36 people and you push them into this tiny area, all these, with this 3-story building, where these people are going to be sharing kitchens, they're transient type people, they're people that aren't here for any length of time, they're here for a short stay. We've got a playground, a school, and we've got a church. Plus we've got all the residential land in the back, where in the past we've had transients come to the back and drink and all that type of thing to the back of the residential property. So with the congestion of all these people in these buildings, I feel that these people are not going to want to be in the buildings. They're going to want to be out of the buildings. So if you can imagine the people we have in here, multiply it times 3, you'll have that number of people. Where would they go? Probably across the street, playground, sit around on the park benches, and if you feel comfortable with your kids, bring them to the playground with, these people. Obviously, maybe they can't smoke in the building, they're gonna be out smoking. They're gonna be out in the parking lot, they're gonna be in their cars. The lot is gonna be mostly asphalt. If you're gonna have 44-car parking lot, that whole lot's gonna be asphalt. The back end of that lot, as some of these people know, it's all wetlands and there's a stream going to the back there. So it's just a lot of people in a little area, and these people are not gonna be, and I'm all for housing for people, and I know there's a shortage. This is not the place for it, in my opinion.
It's not the type of housing that we're looking for.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll ask if you can please, I'll need to recognize everybody individually. So I appreciate the sentiment and the enthusiasm, but I'm just trying to get to everybody in an orderly fashion.
Tim, before we go any further, can we just distinguish that what's in front of us is a site plan review, it's not a special permit. There's
Correct.
no, for the members of the public's information, there's no discretion on our end on this type of project that's being presented. We're just reviewing how the project's laid out and does it meet zoning, parking, not zoning, but parking and things like that. There's no discretion on our end on something like this.
The applicant is presenting, yes, to your point, to clarify for everybody, the applicant is presenting this as an as-of-right use in this zone, which means that the board can review the proposal and propose conditions based on any number of factors. But it is being proposed as an as-of-right use, according to our zoning bylaws. But as we discussed earlier, we will have a specific discussion about whether it meets that standard with the town's lawyers. So, I'm gonna try and go back and forth between virtual and in person here. So I know the user who's enjoying the meeting under the name Annie's iPad has been their virtual hand raised for a while. I'll ask if you can just, I'll just ask if you can state your name and address for the record. You don't need to come on camera if you don't want to, that's your call.
That's fine. So my name is Annie Schuster and I live at 18 Edgewater Drive in River Crossing. And I know a lot of our neighbors have some concerns, whether this is a hotel, a motel, an Airbnb, is it a rehab facility, is it a housing for immigrants, what is going on? My concern as well as the last gentleman is that there is a park across the street. There is the middle school across the street. There is a church where the kids are attending CCD. And we just have to watch out for our young folks and make sure they're safe. So I just hope that the town just like takes a pause and maybe figures out what they are doing and who is moving in, and you know, making the town safe for our young kids. My kids are grown now. I've lived here 35 plus years. My kids are grown. I raised them here. It's a great town to raise your kids, and I don't want that to slip. I would like everybody here that's raising their kids here to still be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I think some of your questions, I think we asked the applicant about this. This is not being proposed for any kind of nursing.
That's all.
So I would view this, I'm
Nursing, no, I
mental-
didn't say nursing home. I didn't say nursing
there's
home.
no nursing or convalescence. My expectation, and this is speaking from my own personal opinion, is that the people who would be staying here, similar to how I would view how people frequent the extended stay in the other end of town. If they're here for a period of time, but not permanently. It's not
Well,
an
when you say the other end
Airbnb.
of town, are you
So-
talking about the facility across from the town hall?
No, the extended stay hotel.
Okay.
So that is a generalization on my part.
So,
I don't
but
think
what is
I don't
the
think the
rent?
town
What is the-
can regulate who moves into any rental.
Yeah.
So
It sounds like a hotel in a little town community to me,
so
and that concerns me.
understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Okay. I'm going to try and keep going back and forth here. Is there anybody else in person who would like to come up and speak, sir? And if you can lower your virtual hand, that'll help make sure that I don't think you still have something else to speak. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Miller. I'm at 227 West Main Street, so I'm directly across from this project. I have some questions regarding the village commercial standards in terms of the design of the buildings, locations of the buildings, height and scale, in terms of being compatible with architectural style and character of surrounding buildings, details, things of that sort. This is a 3-story building. There's nothing that big anywhere near that in that area. I think one of the bigger impacts for me, if it was to move forward, is concern of headlights with all those parking and driveways coming out, and that I'd want to make sure there's a raised buffer that would cut the headlights down, similar to what Walgreens has in front of their property, a high berm that limits headlights. So to Mrs. Parker's point about making it a common driveway, if that was combined to be closer to the middle of the two, that would probably be right in front of the house. These now are separate, one's on one end, one's on the other. I do know that does not line up, that driveway does not line up with Oak Street. There's probably a good 50 feet before you get to Oak Street there. I guess I have questions why there's the need for 46 spaces on the second building that has the same number of bedrooms, but that footprint is also significantly larger than building A, but I didn't see any plans for building B in the packet online to see if there's bigger rooms or something. Don't know if they're limited to only one person per bedroom, or if there can be 2 people per room. And I guess it doesn't I think about how the rooms are heated and cooled if they're individual or combined, to the point that if they have, like some hotel rooms have the rooms through the wall, so now the front of the building has all these registers sticking out of the building. That's not going to look very nice. And if they do or don't have air conditioning, then there's going to be a bunch of window ACs poking out of it, which limits egress as well. So those are some of the points I have at this point.
Yeah, I think the specific designs are something we would get into maybe in a subsequent session about, if we're, to your point, the parking differences. Well, what is driving that and to the design standards of the properties themselves. I think that other things we would probably cover. To your point about the regulations are in height, for height for the zone, it meets the requirements for the zoning. I think the biggest question is whether it meets the use table requirements. So that's what as I mentioned, that we're gonna review with town council.
I was speaking to the village commercial standards
Yeah.
separately.
Yeah.
I know there's height
The village
restrictions,
commercial
but-
standards and the surrounding properties are not the same. Yes, understood. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you just a general question? You're talking about a common driveway. How is that allowed to do that, or how does that work?
Norton does permit common driveways by special permit.
So that's it.
So if you would like to review that as a potential option for the property, you are certainly welcome to do so.
And I think the building height is 38 feet, so it's below the 45 feet, so it's a good 7 feet below the 45 feet allowed requirements.
Thank you. Okay. Going back to public comments, I see somebody in the Zoom meeting with the name, it's named Greg. So I'll ask if you can just come off mute and introduce yourself with your name and address, please.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Great, thank you for having me. My name is Greg Balzerini. I'm from 6 Almers Farm Road. And this actually got brought to my attention, this whole project, from my neighbor, which I never received a letter, which is very unusual because, so I actually posted this on Facebook, on Norton Facebook, just to get everyone involved when it came to what was going on. I'm very concerned with a boarding house being built right down the street from my house. I have a 6 and a 9-year-old, and this is surrounding 3 schools, the high school, the middle school, and JCS Elementary. My concern is what type of people it's going to be, bringing into this town. This is a great community, been about 7 years. My family's grown up here, and I love this town. But something like this, to me, I feel that land can be used for other purposes. And as the first guy stated, there are playgrounds right across the street. And my concern is, granted, I don't know, to think like this, but attic, can go into those locations and, do they want to spend, the whole day in their room? No, they gotta wander out. And, I feel that, town of Norton, it's just gonna bring us down, and I think that, again, that land should be used, for housing, for small businesses, can help our, property value, help our, property tax. But with this boarding house, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. So, I just hope that we vote against it and, we think about our kids, our community. And, I think that's, hopefully, on everyone's mind. So, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you for your comments.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So the concept here is have a property management company. People have to be, vetted like you go to any apartment. You'd have to have credit reports, income, all that kind of stuff. So it's not to say that attic will be here. They've got, I don't know, that's not something we would really be looking for as a property management company, looking for people that have jobs, that have income, that kind of thing. So that's what we're really looking for as a resident for these units.
Thank you, Mr. Larkin. Okay. And Greg, if you can again just lower your virtual hand, that will save the ADD part of my brain from thinking that you're still looking to speak. And that way, if you do want to speak again, you can raise it right back up. So I'll turn around to anybody here in person who would like to come up and speak. Sir?
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Russ Reeves. I live on 222 West Main Street, which my property touches their property. A lot of the concerns I had have been mentioned. And one of the concerns, obviously, is you have 18 apartments in 2 buildings. That's 36 people, minimum if it's full. Maybe more, maybe there's couples. There's an amazing amount of traffic on 123 coming around that very sharp corner, and it's not very visible. I live on that corner. I've seen many accidents on that corner. Also, the property where he's building it, it's probably the best thing is right on 123. Why? Because it's about 10 or 12 feet above the road line. So if you're building a property that's 10 or 12 feet above the road line, your accesses in and out, one or two, is going to have to be either very high coming down, or they're going to have to cut that property down really low, which will mean there's going to be a berm, or are they going to level that all out? Because there's a big hill there. I know because I had to cut down part of it when I redid my property 48 years ago. So I could address all these same problems, or issues, I should say. I don't want to say they're problems yet, but they're probably going to be problems. You do have a lot of people coming in. Let's say half of them are perfect. Okay, let's say, okay, we're trying to fill the buildings up. He mentioned that, well, the property owner's going to hire, it gets people in there. They want to sell the rooms. They're not going to. Joe, I got a job at someplace over here. I'm going to be a dishwasher. Oh, that's great. You got a job. It's okay. You're fine. Well, they're not going to research all of these people's backgrounds. I'm not against neighbors coming in. I think we need neighbors. I think we need business. I don't think these two structures, and not just because they're beside my house, I don't think they're the right fit for our town. Again, a business would be good there, or I know, here's a little inside thing that probably nobody knows. When I first saw these back when the church had the property, and they were surveying it to see, what they could do. And they had surveys. So I walked up to one of the surveyors, and I said, oh, what are you guys, we're surveying the land. What are you guys putting here? Oh, we're surveying it for 3 duplexes. And I said, I don't think you can put duplexes near a wetland. At least, I'm not exactly. And they said, oh, well, that's what we're doing. And he kind of walked away. So I don't think he wanted to tell me that. And the reason why I'm saying is that wetland is bigger than you think. It's not a pond, it's a wetland. It's also an underground river. And because I've been there so long, there's an underground river that goes with it. If you know where the bank is now, Bluestone, they've named it. There used to be a restaurant there called the Chicken Coop. Then it was Farley. Well, when I first moved in there, Bob and that's who the name of one of the gentlemen, Bob and Carlos, they used to have to pump out every year their basement because the water would rise. Then they sold the property. The bank built the property there. When they built their foundation, before they had the rest of it done, it filled up with water. So they had to refigure what they were going to do. So I want you guys to look into that, because they had to change it. They had to put culverts in it. There's an underground stream that feeds that wetland, and it runs behind, where the middle school is and all that property. It's wet there. Some of those people you guys may know, live there, the water rises all the time. So I'm very concerned with that wetland issue. I'm very, very concerned. Thank you. I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep anybody else. It's real late, and I appreciate everybody coming and talking.
I'll just say that to the wetlands concern. This is also something that would go to the Conservation Commission, and they would mark the wetland boundaries and go through all of that. And in terms of water, this would be reviewed for stormwater.
Mm-hmm.
So the stormwater bylaw, Norton says, the short version is you have to. What you do post-build in terms of stormwater has to be equal to or better than what happens with no build. So you have to keep all of that water on your site. And all of those engineering and calculation, all that stuff gets peer reviewed by an engineer that works for the town, not for the applicant.
That's so.
And
they need that.
So that's part of the standard process.
Thanks,
But
Tim.
I appreciate the history.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on what the board member there said, so we have gone to conservation and have extensive peer review with the town peer review, Pat Brennan. And over the last few months, this is being finalized and reviewed, and we did close the hearing night last night, so we have gone through that, all that stuff over the last few months. And just one final point, we're actually, the intention is to do slab on grade for these units, so we won't be doing deep basements or anything like that. So just 2 points there, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other virtual hands raised, so I'll go back to anybody else in person here who'd like to speak. Yes, please.
Good evening, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Lisa Sampson. I live at 90 Newcomb Street in North Massachusetts. We are not a transient population. I've lived here and I've known many people. I've lived here my entire life. I bought my childhood home with my mom. We all still live there. We're a 3-generational household. My concern is, not only is this, how is this going to affect the surrounding property values? Again, I'm on the other side of town, but I'm thinking about how is this affecting the other property values? How is this affecting our schools? Because the issue is, and I'm a teacher, not in Norton unfortunately, but I'm a teacher and the class sizes are continuing to grow. We're opening up a new apartment building right next to McDonald's. Our class sizes are already at like 20 to 25, if not more. Our son is in 3rd grade. He was in a class last year of over 25 students. And as a teacher, I can tell you, class sizes of 25 or more, they're not learning. They're not, and especially where we have so many kids with gaps from COVID and online teaching. So when you made the comment about Zoom, I started laughing. Imagine teaching on it. Just saying.
My wife is a middle school teacher
Thank her.
who taught asynchronously
Yes.
during COVID.
Yep, see.
So,
So I was in person teaching and teaching kids on Zoom. It was fun times. So my concern is, if this is, again, you're gonna have a property manager, but who's to say that the 2 people that are on the application don't turn into 3 or 4? Because I'm sorry, I've known people, again, I've grown up here my entire life. We have people, say for example in Norton Glen, there's 2 people or 3 people on a thing, but hey, mom's boyfriend is living there on the slide. And so are they going to be going in and doing inspections? How many of these kids are going to be coming into the classrooms as well? That is then again, going to again continue to raise the number of kids in the thing. So will there be a strict guidance and governance on how many people are actually going to be living in those rooms? Again, we have not only the high school, the middle school, the church, the playground across the street, you also have to consider the Yale School. That's in that vicinity as well. These are all things that are being affected, and I'm gonna bring it back to the 2 things that I heard earlier at the beginning of the meeting. How is this socially desirable, and how does this demonstrate an existing need? Because in all my honesty, I don't feel like we need a boarding house, like everybody has said. We need, if we're gonna build houses or businesses that are going to bring things to Norton. A transient population, they're not making a commitment to Norton. They're here for a set period of time, and then they're moving on again. So what are they bringing to the table for us? Because I'm sorry again, I've lived here my entire life. I've already made the joke, I want the corner lot in the Newcomb Newland Cemetery, because I'm not leaving here. This is my home, this is where I'm gonna stay, and that's where I wanna be buried, is right on my street. So what is going to be brought to our table? How are these people going to help us if they're only here for a set amount of time? We want people who are going to make the commitment to Norton to continue to make us better like we are. Thank you.
so.
Yeah.
I can respond to some of that, I think. The applicant stated that the type of use they're proposing has specific state guidelines around permitting, licensing, and all of those things. Those are all things that the board will review
Okay.
as we go through this. But to your point about the socially desirable and existing need, I will say that those are conditions that the board has for a discretionary special permit. As it is being proposed, the applicant is proposing this as an as-of-right use, which means that those conditions are not things that we would be able to look at. But for the umpteenth time this evening, that is something that we're reviewing with town council.
Thank you.
And if the determination from town council is that it does not meet that requirement, then it would not be allowed in this zone, period.
Because we're not a huge business-oriented home, we're more developmental, we're more homes. It's not like there's this overarching need. Our one grocery store that was major has left Norton, and we're left with a grocery store, unfortunately, that's not frequently visited. And it's disheartening to see different companies and businesses in this town not flourishing like we used to. And again, we're more residential than anything else, so what's the need for it? Thank you, I appreciate it.
I'll just ask that when other people are speaking, if we could try and keep the volume down, please. If there's anybody else who'd like to come up and speak, please. If everybody feels like everybody else has covered those points, that's fine. I just want to make sure that I make enough eye contact with the different areas of the room that if somebody's going to get up or they're hesitating, that I'm stalling for enough time for somebody to. Yep. See, that's what happens when I stick
talked me
down.
into it.
I want to make sure that nobody leaves the meeting saying I didn't give you a chance to speak.
Thanks for your time. My name is Rich Walter. I live on Pine Street. And we operate a rooming house in town, and we have since the 70s. The family has. And the difference being that between this project, that's what caught my attention, is a rooming house. I'm interested, what are they going to do? Well, I think the problem that we've been presented with is the definition of a rooming house. We are owner occupied. We are there to see who's coming in, who's going out, how long they're staying, how well they're maintaining our property, and all that. And I think that to consider something like this, it's not a rooming house. It's transit housing. It's low-income housing. People can rent an apartment. I agree that there's a need for it. I don't know if this is the right project for it. And trying to claim that it is a rooming house doesn't meet the definition, Think about what a rooming house is. Go back to the movies, the old movies, mom making a dinner for all the people staying. We don't do that, but we try and keep it as personal as we can. And when you have 18 units times 2, it doesn't get very personal. So consider that with this project, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I just see one additional virtual hand raised in the Zoom meeting. All it says is iPhone, so I'm going to have to know that you know which one you are. If you can just state your name and address for the record, please.
Pamela Harlow, 2 Elmer's Farm Road, Norton, Mass. I've been living here since '99. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, I've been living here since '99. I've been a substitute teacher in Norton for about 5 years. I have a 9 and 11-year-old, and I'm right on the corner of Oak. So when you take this side, and I have the fenced-in yard, so I have major concerns. Because if you're saying that you're using the extended stay, moving those people this way, we're gonna be overpopulated and not in a good way. That's just my opinion. And I don't think it's needed in our little town. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
The point of clarification, we never said we should take people to extended stay. I
No,
think
that I agree that is not something you stated. That was an analogy that I myself made to try to clarify some of the potential resident types who might be there. For example, extended stay works with nurses who are on assignment or something like that. So that is completely my words, and I will own that. Thank you. So I think I've exhausted the public comments that we have available this evening, although I could be proven wrong in the next 2 minutes. I know, Mr. Larkin, that we have talked about getting a further opinion from town council based on the Mass General Law guidance, et cetera, that you have specified. And that's obviously one factor in this. In terms of next steps, are there other pieces of information you need from the board to prepare for further reviews at this time?
Because we haven't, I've not before this before, so what's generally your guys' process for a site plan review? Is there something, is there a process that you guys want to go through? I think we mentioned design of the building. Is there something like maybe at a certain meeting we do design of the building and other things are parking or snow removal? How would you guys like to proceed? Assume we can still proceed.
Sure. So I think some of the things that we've talked about, which I think would be good to go into greater depth, and I'm just restating things that people have already stated. Identifying areas of the parking area which might be used for deliveries. You mentioned snow removal, that especially given the proximity to the wetlands, having that identified is always helpful. Understanding the if there are differences in design between the two buildings in terms of are there multiple bedroom units, or one of the residents had mentioned the disparate parking number of spaces between the two buildings. If there's a right now they're being presented as two very similar buildings. If there are significant differences between them that are good to understand, that would be good to know. Stormwater you've already done with conservation, so I'll leave that aside. Van Ness has provided the sightline questions in our packet, so I'll leave that alone. If there's a, if we're not lining up with Oak Street, it might, I don't recall that being mentioned by Mr. Dirk or his team in their report, but if that's gonna create some cross-stream traffic concerns from a traffic engineering standpoint, that would be a good box to check from that perspective.
Can we make sure that the people who did the traffic study are aware of the additional development that's been approved around
Sure.
the site?
Yeah.
Because there'll be another curb cut.
Yeah, that's, that, yeah, so that's.
What's that one, Mr. Chairman? What was that? The additional development, what was that one?
The question was just making sure that that from a sightline perspective, you're aware of other developments that have been approved in nearby properties as they relate to curb cuts.
Oh, have they already been built? Is that what you're saying?
They've been approved but not built.
Approved, not built, okay.
Yeah. From a traffic volume perspective, I have a feeling that no matter what we do, the volume that 123 can handle is not going to, that there's not going to be a significant difference from that perspective, but just in terms of sight lines and proximity.
Yeah, I think you'd be correct there, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I've reviewed enough traffic studies to know that much at least. So, are there other areas that we'd like to have the applicant review in greater detail in a subsequent meeting? In terms of your question, Mr. Larkin, I don't think we need to set up specific, we don't need to set aside one meeting to go through one thing and then continue. From a design standpoint, I think we're probably looking at one meeting to review all of those aspects unless there are other things that we come up with and need to address. And obviously the zoning and allowable use question is independent of all those discussions.
My computer's off. Is there a landscape plan for buffering and whatnot? We've heard about it, I forget.
I'm not sure. Do you have a landscape plan included in the packet?
Landscape plan part of the packet. So maybe what we can do is we talk about the design of the building and the landscape plan at the same time. I can have the architect and the landscape architect on the same day for that meeting. Maybe we do that.
Perfect.
I'd very much like to see a single driveway for those buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the problem is with this, as the chair pointed, it's a special permit, so that makes it a difficult process. It's two different lots, so.
If you can choose not to, that's obviously your prerogative. Just understand that the board has expressed that it may be advantageous from a traffic perspective. In theory, if these are as-of-right uses, the special permit for a common driveway to reach those uses is not something that we would, it would be challenging for us to look unfavorably on it independent of that.
So if we could get to the point that said, well, if you guys can make this common driveway would help out a lot, that's something we could look at later today. Okay.
Yes.
If I could, sir, Village Commercial does want buildings near the road and parking in the back. And that parking lot is spread completely all over the property with a very oddly placed building in the back. I guess it's sort of behind the church, but,
No, it's behind the house.
well, the church is
Right.
to the side of it.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to take it back so it kind of got additional screening. I know you'd want, if it was more of a commercial building where it's like a dentist office or whatever, you want them up front so people are more visible. This one, since it's more residential, the concept is to push it back a bit so it wouldn't be as visible.
Again, because we're caught up in the site plan type thing, because it's, whether it's a special permit, I really think we're either looking at a multifamily apartment building or a hotel. It's either one of those two. It certainly does not fit our criteria as tourist or rooming. So the idea of moving those towards the road with a common driveway or as a single building with one driveway, parking in the back, that fits our village commercial criteria. It meets the definitions, and whether we approve it or not is up for debate, but.
Yeah, and if the position that we end up is that it needs to be classified as different use and evaluated in a different way, my assumption is that the applicant will come back to different plans.
Correct, that would be correct.
So,
I can't feel comfortable with like saying anything positive to the site plan review without being clear about whether it actually fits the definition.
understood. Okay. So, Eric and Wayne, anything that you wanted to add for a list of questions or areas to address that we would like the applicant to focus on in a follow-up session?
Not at this time. No additional questions. Just kind of want to hear what the council says.
Okay. So in terms of a continuation, our next meeting in January is did we say the 27th?
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. So that's the 23rd? I can't do math. And then we have meetings in February. You mentioned the landscape plan and different things. Do you feel that, assuming that, I'm gonna say that the board would like to have a week, give or take, we'll give some leeway to that, to review documentation that you submit prior to our meeting, so that we don't come into the meeting cold. Assuming that you would want probably more than a week or a week and a couple of days to put together the additional documentation, does it make sense to look at February sessions?
You're just talking about, you mean additional documentation for a landscape plan and stuff, or?
For that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so that's already been submitted, so I can have I can have the landscape architect be at that hearing date, so the January one is fine. I think I can have him there and the architect at that hearing for those two to address those kind of questions.
So the next session is in 2 weeks. Brian, how does our agenda look for that meeting, other than what we've already continued? Just that? Okay. So it'll be a shorter meeting next time, even better.
You guys got a lot going on tonight. You guys are busy.
Okay. Any other objections or questions to continuing to January the 23rd?
So moved.
Seconded.
Then we have a motion and a second, so I'll go through the room for a roll. Jim?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you very much. We're continued to 2 weeks. I am going to circle back to planning board business and policies now. So I'll ask if you'd like to stick around for the meeting, please do. If you'd like to leave, I'd ask you to try and keep it down for the next 10 minutes or so. So the one item I wanted to address with the board is just to thank Steve, Laura, and Alan who were able to attend the virtual session for zoning recodification last week. I like the attorney who presented it, even though we had way too many stories. The ask from both the planning board and the zoning board was to come up with a joint kind of small committee, not the full both boards, to meet and review changes that they're proposing. Out of Jim, Wayne, Eric, I know you three weren't able to attend. Are either of you three chomping at the bit to join a zoning recodification working group? Or would you like to be left out of that process?
I'd like to be part of that process.
You would like to be a part of it, Eric? Okay.
Yes.
And Wayne, would you like to be added to those discussions? Would you like to just be informed at the different sections go through the process?
Informed.
Okay.
Just informed.
Okay. So that leaves, that would be 5 members of the planning board who have quote-unquote volunteered or not unvolunteered.
I'm extremely interested in zoning.
I assumed that you would.
He keeps
Get
saying.
out.
Okay. So I feel like I don't want to say we have too many people who want to join, but we might have too many people who want to join.
I can drop out easily.
Okay. So I'll say that Eric, Steve, Laura, and myself are interested in participating in the working group. If we don't attend every session, I think that's fine. But they're just going to be staggered at different points, going through the different sections. For everybody who wasn't there, one of the helpful additions that they were going to suggest was putting all of the definitions in all of the zoning bylaws in an appendix instead of scattering them throughout every single chapter of the bylaws. And a whole host of other changes which probably make sense. So I hate to say I'm excited about zoning bylaws because it makes me sound really lame, but
Yeah, I get it.
but okay.
It's the organization that I like.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The organization would be awesome.
Yes. Brian, is there anything? I say you had your hand up. Is there anything else that?
So Eric, we do have our next meeting set up. It's February 13th at 5 o'clock.
Zoom.
Hold on. Let me move Zoom for a second so I can see my calendar. The 13th of February.
It should be.
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, 5 o'clock is fine.
Yeah. And there'll be some sessions that'll be just planning board, some that'll be just zoning. So. Yeah. Okay. So we can follow up with Mark, yeah, the other lawyer, to sort that out. So thank you.
And that was on the January 4th meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just have to listen to that then.
Yes. It had a unique video setup, so enjoy.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, don't look at me and Steve.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody wanted to raise in the open session this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll go through the roll. Jim?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yeah.
Eric?
Sure.
And I will vote yes. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned. We made good time tonight.